Hello and welcome to the Comic Conspiracy, episode 417. Is that correct? Yeah, 417. For the week of September 3rd, 2019. My name is Ryan Higgins. Who's here with me this week?
Brock Sager.
Well,
Scott.
And Kevin.
That would be Brock, Scott, Toby, and Kevin. Thank you guys very much.
I was hoping we would get 4 Brock Sagers.
No,
that
please.
would be hilarious.
That's a lot of
Please no.
Nope.
Please no.
Nope. That's enough.
Now this we have
I would
very
just love to see
No, one is enough. One is too much already.
before this podcast gets as derailed as it normally does. We have a nice interview with John Morrow, which we're going to play right now. He is an author. He is the publisher and founder of TwoMorrows Publishing. Publishes a number of books based on Jack Kirby, Golden Age, Silver Age comics, and Kevin Sharp worked with him on the Kirby and Lee Stuf Said, the complex. Wait, pull that back up. The complex genius of the Marvel Universe and its creators' own words.
They also do the back issue magazine.
Back issue,
Alter
Ego.
So pumped
Yep.
to read that book.
We have
been some excellent Alter Ego books.
Oh yeah. Fantastic, great guy, fantastic company. We have a great interview with him, so we're gonna play that interview now. We're gonna catch you guys on the backside, and we're gonna have our kind of regular episode on the end. So give this interview a listen, and we'll see you guys in about an hour. All right, on the line with us, we have a very special guest. This is author, founder of TwoMorrows Publishing, and a huge Jack Kirby fan, obviously.
Major
Jack Kirby fan. John Morrow. John, hello.
Hi, guys. It's a pleasure to be here on the podcast.
Now, Kevin Sharp here has been singing your praises for quite some time. He was very excited to get you on here. Before we go into the real the meat of the podcast here, the meat of our interview, we always like to ask our guests their secret origin for comic books, how you got into comic books, what you were doing, as a kid or an adult or whenever you started reading comics, and then kind of how that relates to what you're doing today. And we'll be definitely talk about a lot about TwoMorrows here in a minute. But let's hear your origin story. I want to know what your earliest comic experiences were.
Wow, my very earliest. I was with my dad heading. I was from a town in Alabama, Montgomery, the capital city of Montgomery, Alabama. And I was with my dad heading downtown. He was a pipe smoker, and he had to go to the cigar store or whatever it was to get some pipe tobacco. And I went in the store with him. I was about 6 years old, and they had these strange little pamphlets on the wall there with all these colorful pictures on them. And I didn't know what they were. And my dad said, "Go ahead and get one if you want one." And I looked through it. I remember there was a great Gil Kane Spider-Man cover with the Spidey kind of like sliding down a wall, trying to hold on, and the Green Goblin's there. I think it was like, I forget what issue number, probably issue 98, maybe somewhere in there. And I specifically remember that one. So, of course, what did I do? I got a Gold Key Scooby-Doo Where Are You comic because I was 6 years old and I didn't know who Spider-Man was. So, so I got this Scooby-Doo comic book and took it home, read it like 5 times, and I was like, wow, this is really neat. And then, unfortunately, loaned it to this friend down the street one day, and found it the next day. It had rained, and it was out in his backyard, just waterlogged, and the cover was missing. So that taught me very early on: never loan your comic books to anybody, even your good friends. So, but no, beyond that, it was just seeing a few random scattered ones here and there, and slowly developing an interest. Every year for Christmas, it seemed like somehow I would ask for some comics or something. I remember I saw my first comic book price guide, the Overstreet Guide. I think it was the fourth edition. I was in some weird little bookstore with my mom, and I'm looking around because I was bored, and I went over there, oh, what is this? And it showed how much comic books were worth there. And I'm like, wow, I have some of these comics. I'm going to be rich. Back then it was worth 50 cents or 75 cents, and I'd only pay, 15 cents or 25 cents for them. So I thought, wow, this is a good deal. But Never did quite cash in on that collection and the price guide prices, but
did your parents? Did they throw all your old comic books away? That's always the classic story, or did you hold on to some of those? Bless
their heart. My mom was actually pretty supportive of it. Not that she thought it was ever going to amount to anything in my life necessarily, but she wasn't against me getting comics or anything. I remember I was homesick from school. I had strep throat or something, and she went to the drugstore to get my medicine for it, and then came home with it was a couple of it was a World's Finest Comics. I think it's number 201, actually, where Superman and Green Lantern are teamed up, and Dr. Fate's on the cover too. It was just, I remember she brought this thing on, and I'm like, wow, how in the world did you think to get this cool comic? Because this is one I would have picked out. Yeah. And somehow she managed it. I actually still have that comic. So
nice.
I was reminding her of that the other day on the phone, as a matter of fact, that how neat that was, that she hooked me up there when I was 7 or 8 years old or something. So
that's cool.
It was great. Hey, comics just kind of always found their way into my hands one way or the other. But I can't say I was ever any kind of Jack Kirby fan early on, though.
Yeah.
His stuff was just too ugly. I really, the first time I saw Jack Kirby, I was like, wow, this guy really cannot draw. What is his problem? Let me get some of this nice Neil Adams heart here, right? Now this guy could draw. And I saw the error of my ways shortly thereafter, though.
It took me quite a few years to become a New Gods fan. I just couldn't understand it for a long time, and now it's some of my favorite work. Right? You just don't, you just don't know what's going to hit you at the right time, right?
So they say, everybody, I think maybe Roy Thomas figured this out, that it's whatever you're reading when you're 12 years old, that will always be your favorite comic. And,
still true.
Yeah, I think that's true, because that's when I discovered the New Gods. I mean, before that, my first real Kirby comic was a Commandy comic that I got, and I guess it was probably around 73 or so. Got it in a trade with a friend. He didn't want it. I didn't want it. Put it on the bottom of my stack that I got from him. He said, no, I don't want it. You have to take it. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And I read everything else in the stack I had traded for, and I got to the bottom. I didn't have anything else to read. I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and read this. And it was like some kind of weird little switch flipped in my brain. By the time I finished that, it was like, wow. It wasn't the art style, though. It was the storytelling and the story itself, and how attached I got to these characters. I didn't know who they were. One of them was a giant grasshopper, and I was just mesmerized by this. And after that, I'm like, wow, let me look a little more of what this Jack Kirby guy does. And from there, I started picking up various things, and then discovered the Fourth World, the New God stuff, and that is my all-time favorite Kirby work.
Nice.
And that just really, to this day, I can go back and reread that entire Fourth World series, have a great time doing it, pick up new little tidbits here and there, and still feel just as disappointed at the end of it that he didn't get to finish it at the time he was originally doing it.
All right.
Now, John, there's no wrong answer to this question, but just to get you on the record, were you a Marvel kid or a DC kid growing up?
Oh, DC all the way, baby. Yeah, I was then, and I still am now. And don't get me wrong, I love Marvel comics. Well, most of them. But I could still, if I go hunting through the dollar bins or something at a comics convention, I'm not picking up old beat-up copies of 70s Marvel comics. I'm picking old beat-up copies of 70s DC comics. Just the oddball, weirdo things, old Jimmy Olsen issues or something like that. Even the non-Kirby ones, because especially in the 70s, they had the best covers on the DC books. And invariably, you would buy one and get it home and open it up, and it's like, ugh, what is this dreck in here, right? But the covers were so good on the DC books. So I think Marvel was the exact opposite. The covers, they were, some of them were really good, but they didn't quite have the appeal the DC covers had, I didn't think. But the interiors on the Marvel stuff was far superior, just quality-wise, across the board. So
I feel your pain. I came in a little bit later, so I was having to buy them bagged and boarded at a comic shop, but I would get reeled in by those Neil Adams covers on the 70s DC books. And then you get it home, and it's I don't want to call out any artist by name, but it's not Neil Adams on the interior.
DC had a lot of very workmanlike artists who could turn in, and they did fine storytelling and stuff. They just weren't flashy. They weren't, it wasn't sexy kind of stuff like a Neil Adams cover was. And DC had all those great, coloring effects and mezzotints and things like that. They would work in, pebble board textures and Zipatone and stuff like that on the covers, and these great tone things they did. If you've ever seen the old Sea Devils issues from the 60s, oh my gosh, those are such beautiful covers. I mean, they're almost like paintings because of the great techniques they used when they printed these things. And I have no problem buying an old comic just for its cover. Maybe that's because I grew up not expecting the inside to look that great. But if it's got a great cover, if it appeals to me, I'll get it. Yeah. And that's kind of the fun of collecting comics to me.
Now, did you keep reading like through high school and college and everything, or did you kind of take a big break? I did. I read nonstop until 1988, I think it was. It was after Watchmen and Dark Knight came out, and which I really enjoyed both of those series. I thought they were great, but they were so maybe it was a confluence of where I was in life at that point. But I was done with college, starting a career, had just gotten married. We were saving up for our first house, and it was just like that was not expenditure I wanted anymore. I wasn't enjoying comics that much after that. And it just kind of stopped. I said, no, this is a good stopping point, and I sold probably 85% of my comic book collection at that point to a dealer to help get the down payment money for our first little house. Nice. And, and I didn't really regret it at the time. It wasn't that hard to part with those books, but I kept a few Neil Adams things and a few Jack Kirby things, and I kept all the Fourth World stuff. I just couldn't bear to get rid of that. But that was pretty much it. And most everything else I had, I got rid of at that point. Sad to say, I've had to go back and rebuy an awful lot of those books since then. It's been fun. Yeah, it's fun tracking him down again. They do so many graphic novels now. Like that Jack Kirby Fourth World Omnibus that DC put out, I think is beautiful. I think it's humongous, right? And it's much cheaper than buying the original books these days. So
absolutely, it's amazing that we're in an age where you can see all this stuff collected in formats like that. Yeah. When we were kids, right? It's like you would go to 2 or 3 different drugstores or 7-Eleven stores or whatever, just trying to find all of that week's or that month's comics because it was real sporadic with the distribution. And now, even in college, I started ordering from Westfield Comics, and I got my comics by mail because we didn't have a comic shop where I went to college. And that alone, that was pre-internet days, but that was a great simple way to all of a sudden, what a luxury. You can pick anything you want, fill out a form, and it'll be delivered to you. You're not going to miss any books anymore. That was really the turning point, I thought. And, it was just, from there. Now, right, internet, all the online comics places you can buy stuff now. Anything you need, you'll find it somewhere.
Right.
Now, whether or not you can afford it, it's another story. But
yeah, I'm sure you might share my pain, John, on some of the how the value of some of those Bronze Age comics has spiked over the years.
I'm astonished.
Yeah. Things that I remember haunting the dollar bins or the quarter bins even for decades are now on the back display wall at Comic Cons.
Even some of those 80s, 90s books, I mean, half of those, when those characters get picked up to use in movies or they just get old enough and suddenly those people are back buying comics. Do you get so what's your kind of current day? You've been working in the industry obviously for a lot of time at this point, so it's probably a little bit different than a regular collector, but do you read anything currently? Do you go see the movies, the TV shows? I mean, it's such a comic. Whoever would have guessed the world that is comic books now? So
really, when we were coming up reading comics, who thought we'd go to the Movieplex and see Avengers Endgame? That was when I saw that movie. That was what I was thinking through that whole movie. It's just like, how did we get to here from where we started as kids? It's like, we were lucky to have a Christopher Reeve Superman movie, right?
Well, wait till you walk.
The kids that grew up and now we're in charge of things, right?
When you walk up, John, with your money and ask for one ticket for the New Gods movie, that's when you know it's come full circle.
It's coming. I know it's coming. I'm waiting to see. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm cautiously optimistic that DC might actually get it right on that one. So, we'll see. But it's just mind-boggling that we're at that point now. But no, as far as new comics, I don't buy many new comics at all. The most recent new thing that I've really enjoyed, Walter Simonson's Ragnarok. I've enjoyed that. Yeah. Let's see, what else have I been reading? I don't frequent my local comic shop very often. Maybe once a month, once every 2 months, something like that. So I can kind of keep an eye on what's coming out. But most of the stuff just doesn't appeal to me. And I know I'm going to sound like an old dinosaur here, but it seems like most of the up-and-coming artists now, they're just very homogenous to me. I look at their styles, and it's like they're extremely talented. Don't get me wrong. They're amazing illustrators, but I don't see that they have that distinctive, very, very idiosyncratic style like Walter Simonson does, or Mike Mignola.
Yeah.
Eric Powell stuff. I love Eric Powell stuff. But he's very, very distinctive, very one of a kind guy. Nobody else really draws like him. And that's the thing for me. It's you can have all the great technique in the world, but if you don't have a really distinctive style, it doesn't speak to me so much. And so I can admire it from a technique standpoint, but not necessarily stylistically, if that makes sense. So, and I think that's why the new comics don't speak to me very much.
So many of the big artists these days, right, if they're not picked up by Hollywood or they go into video games, right, all they're doing is covers. There's no money in the interior. It's so much work for so little money at the end of the day. They can make more money doing a cover. So, anyone that makes it big, they're just not going to do interior work anymore. And, this is Marvel and DC, and this is a lot of the independent companies too. It's everyone. It's just so hard to get consistent art on. And even 6 issues in a row, let alone 100, right? It just does not happen. So,
yeah, and I think that's quite a testament to the guys that we grew up enjoying. The Kirbys and the John Buscema's of the world, John Romita, all Kurt Swan at DC. I mean, how many months after months did they never miss a deadline? Yeah. How many issues did they drive? And they somehow managed to make a good enough living to support their families. Maybe that kind of tells you how screwy the economy is these days to be able to make a living. What you have to do to support your family these days that you can't. Somebody like Jack Kirby, right? He cranked out 15 pages a week, something like that. I think was his DC contract.
It's crazy.
And and you got guys now that can't do 15 pages a month.
No.
But they're also putting much more rendering into it than Kirby did. Kirby worked extremely fast, and but he could make a living with 15 pages a month or a week. I mean, and it's a very different thing. You got a lot of the companies have to hire artists from other countries who can work for less, right? Have a lower standard of living or something like that. I sometimes scratch my head wondering how DC and Marvel and Dark Horse managed to produce these beautiful books when I know what printing costs. I know what the labor costs are. I know what they would have to pay the artists as a minimum, and it seems like a zero-sum game. Like you're just really, it's a losing battle unless you score that big, Hollywood contract. Somebody options it for a film or something like that, and maybe that's what it all boils down to now. We'll keep cranking out IP of our own and hope somebody picks up on it and makes a big budget film out of it or a video game or something.
Yeah, we've talked with DC and Marvel kind of on the back end occasionally. At least, they've all said, hey, we're profitable at our price points. They've must be printing just enough copies where the cost is cheap enough. And, especially Marvel, I know it does not have a ton of they have some good interior artists, but I don't think a lot of these guys are, they're not taking the big indie guys and making them superstars, right? All the big guys are doing covers or going somewhere else. So I can't imagine the money's going to the writers for a lot of these books. I think it's not the artists.
Well, and that's an interesting twist from when I was growing up. It was the artist, right? The writers were I mean, they're certainly important, but they were secondary. They weren't the superstars. They weren't the ones that you were flocking to get an autograph from at a convention. And it really has turned around now. Now it's like the writers are, they're the ones that command the attention these days. And that's another interesting switch for me. That I ponder sometimes how that switch happened. I think it's all Alan Moore's fault. I think he started the ball rolling. And God bless him, I love his work, so I still love it to this day. But he was the first writer that really clicked for me in terms of wow, I will buy anything this guy writes regardless of who's drawing it. And prior to that was not the case for me. It had to have great art. I could take great art with so-so writing that I couldn't take great writing with so-so art. There was no reason for me to buy that book if that were the case. And
Kevin's giving me the big thumbs up there, and that is I love comic book art. I absolutely love it, but if the story's nothing, I have no interest in it. I don't care what the art's like, right? If the story's great, the art could be, but you want that big package, right? You want both to be perfect. It's so rare these days, though. I think it's always been rare, but it's more rare now because so much of the focus is on writing. And again, like I said, the artists aren't doing interiors, so it's really hard to get both. And there's, there are cases where it happens, but it's not as common as it used to be.
Well, I want to mention you because you get writer artists, right?
Sure.
And the ones that are really good, they deliver exactly what you're talking about. The perfect package. But you were mentioning, you asked me other new things I read. One of the most recent new things I read actually was Tom King's Mr. Miracle series, which, I'm a Kirby fan. Yeah, so I'm a Kirby fan, so I was, another person trying to do Mr. Miracle here. There have been a million of them. And I haven't found any of them other than, like, Steve Rude's version, really to my taste.
Yeah.
But I got this, and I read it, and I got the collection, thankfully, because I could sit down and read it as a cohesive unit, kind of the way I think they planned it. You didn't have to wait 30 days from when one issue ends to see how the next one starts, literally what it says at the end of issue 1, and then how that bleeds into what it says at the beginning of issue 2. Seeing the entire package and reading in one sitting, which is what I did when I got this thing. I was so engrossed by the first issue, I couldn't stop. I just had to sit down and do the whole run.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, you want to talk about a good combination of writing and art. And neither one, I'm not sure. I'm still trying to digest that book, and I read it like 8 months ago. But it's like the writing was so amazingly different than anything I've read in comics before, and the art was so amazingly different from anything I've seen in comics before. And it seems like those two are going to go together just perfectly, or they're going to clash and be horrible together. And those guys, they knocked it out of the park, I thought. It's not Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle,
sure,
although it's based on it, right? But, Jack would never approach a comic like that. But Jack would have seen that comic and gone like, this is good comics. These guys are doing their own thing here. And they, I can't speak highly enough of that stuff. I think Tom King is amazing. So,
well, yeah, that is a favorite book of the podcast, and Mitch Gerardis, the artist. I mean, they've done a lot of work together, and they're doing an Adam Strange book next, which is now my most anticipated book of 2020. So,
there you go. I'm glad I didn't know that was coming out, so I'm gonna have to search for that next year.
Yeah, that should be really good. I don't want to go too long here, so I want to ask you. I want to talk about the book, and I want to talk about TwoMorrows. So, you've done at this point. I don't know. Do you got a count? How many books have you guys published outside of like the magazines? Like,
let's make sure we spell it for the listeners. That's TWOMorrows.
Yes, MORROWS.
Right. Yeah.
TwoMorrows.
Well, and I have I have to keep a database of everything we've published and everything we've got coming up. I think there's what is there? At last count, 936 different items in my database, I think. But now that includes, what are we up to? 160 issues of Alter Ego magazine, right? So that's a big chunk of it. Back issue magazine's up to number 116 now. And et cetera. Jack Kirby Collector's up to number 77. I'm working on number 78 now. So that eats a fair amount of, but I mean, books were probably at 250 books, maybe something like that. It might be too many. Somewhere between 100 and 250.
So for people that aren't familiar, listeners that aren't familiar with the company, if you haven't seen these, TwoMorrows publishes a ton of books and magazines focused around Golden Age, Silver Age comics, into the Bronze Age. Back issue magazine focuses a lot on like 80s. And I don't really get into it's kind of like 80s focus.
70s also.
Late 70s, 80s. So it's not modern stuff, but I know I have a big collection of the reprints of the Legion Outpost. I have those all-star collections. There's a couple others that I have.
Companion books.
Yeah, the companion books, yeah. Those are some of my favorite reference books. If you're an artist, you have to check out the Modern Masters series. There was 30 some odd. I don't know the number off the top of my head. A ton of these books, single volumes, focused on artists, again, older, more modern.
Those Modern Masters books are some of the best bargains in comics reading.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a class. It's like an education between the covers, which we'll come back to that in a few minutes.
So if you haven't...
appreciate that.
Yeah, if you haven't seen these books at your local shop, definitely check into them. But yeah, what's the how'd you get into all the publishing end of it?
totally by accident. Everything in my life all seems to come back to Jack Kirby one way or the other, whether I mean for it to or not. And really, I grew up being a big Jack Kirby fan after, I mentioned how I discovered him with that Commandy issue. From there, worked my way to the Fourth World. From there, worked my way backwards to the 60s Marvel stuff like Fantastic Four and Thor. And just grew up being a big Jack Kirby fan. And, he kind of got out of comics more or less around 1978, 79. He was doing a little bit of independent stuff, and I picked that up for Captain Victory and Silver Star, things like that. But he was working in the animation industry at that point, mostly out of comics. At that point, he was getting older, and he was retired in the 80s for the most part. So I kind of, there wasn't any new Kirby stuff out there. And then when I kind of gave up comics in 88 to help fund our new house, that was it. But I had always had this goal that one day I wanted to get out to the San Diego Comic-Con and meet Jack Kirby and just shake his hand, because I'd been trying ever since I read there was a San Diego Comic-Con when I was a kid and saw that Jack Kirby was there. And my friend and I, we every year from the time I was probably 9 or 10 years old, we always tried to plot and scheme some way. Okay, how are we going to get our parents to get us out to California? Well, looking back, there was no way in the world either of our parents had the money to take us out to California for a comic book convention. But we kept trying every year and never got it. And then finally in 1991, my wife and I had just gotten underway in our new advertising agency. And we were doing some freelance work for a client, and we hired a freelance illustrator that lived out in California and had an opportunity to go out there on business. And it's like, wow, if we can coincide this with the San Diego Comic-Con, maybe I can actually meet Jack Kirby. And we worked it out. I got there to the convention. I only had an afternoon to spend at Comic-Con, but did manage to meet him.
Yes.
That's a whole different story of intrigue of what that involved. But got to shake his hand and talk to him for 3 or 4 minutes, and he was exactly the way everybody described him. Super nice guy. He was no ego, was more interested in talking about you and learning what you did and where you're from and like that than talking about himself. And it was just a wonderful, great experience. That was 91, and I thought, wow, great, my life is complete now. I can close the door on comics, and I'm done because I've met Jack Kirby and life's good. But then he passed away in February of 1994. And my old buddy, Matt, who had schemed with me to try to get out there to Comic-Con, faxed me the clipping from USA Today of Kirby's obituary. And I'm like, oh, wow. Because at that point, I'd gotten rid of most of my comics. I hadn't read them in a while and decided, wow, it's like, okay, well, I guess I need to get my Kirby comics out and reread them, And I did all that spring. And that kind of just, out of nowhere, I kind of got the idea, well, wait a minute, surely he's still got some fans out there. I know he's been retired for 10 years or whatever, but and I got the issues of Comics Buyer's Guide right after he passed away where people wrote in nice letters about him, and all their addresses were in there. So I thought, you know what? We're doing advertising graphic design. We got computer software to do design work. I'm going to do a little 16-page Xerox newsletter about Jack Kirby just for fun. And I'm going to mail it to 125 people that wrote into CBG where I could cull addresses from. And just for fun, and I figured, if it lasts 4 or 5 issues, that's great. And my wife was like, pat me on the head. Oh, yeah, you go have fun with your little pet project. It'll be fine. We didn't have kids then or anything. And so it was just a fun little lark to do. And I had no clue that it would ever result in what it is now. I had no clue it would take off the way it did, and no clue the kind of just in seismic response this little 16-page newsletter that I hand-fed dimes into the Xerox machine at the local drugstore to copy, that it would take off the way it did. But, we did the first issue, did 125 copies for free, sent them out, and put a little notice in there, hey, if you've got Jack Kirby art, you want to write something about him, send it in. Well, boy, did I get my money's worth out of that. And every day the mailbox was just full of orders for subscriptions, and people would send copies of their Kirby sketches that he did for them or their original art. They could write stories. We had to do a second copy run of another 100 copies of the first issue, and then we had to do a third. I think we ended up doing like 7 different printings of different quantities of the first issue alone because people just kept ordering it. And the word of mouth was incredible. We didn't have the internet going for us then. It wasn't in comic shops. It was absolutely grassroots word of mouth. And from there, it just took off. Issue 8 of the Jack Kirby Collector was our Well, let's see, issue 6. It was my Fourth World special because that was the one I was going to go out on. And I was going to make it the best thing ever done on the Fourth World. I was going to find out how he was going to originally end it. I got the connections for Mark Evanier and Steve Sherman, who were his assistants in the 70s when he was doing the New God stuff. Interviewed them, and his inker then, Mike Royer, interviewed him and had this great 36-page issue instead of 16. It was like more than double size. And decided, okay, I can't sit here feeding dimes into a copier anymore. I'm going to have to actually commercially print this thing. And I gambled all our money to pay for this printing on this thing. We had no idea how many to print, but you couldn't just do 100. I don't even remember how many we printed, but it was probably more like 1,000, 1,500, something like that. And I figured, well, I'm going to be left with boxes of these things. But took a shot on it, sold them out. I went to our first Comic-Con as an exhibitor in 95, right after that 6th issue was done. We did it as cheap as we possibly could. And back then, you could call 2 weeks before Comic-Con and get a booth and get a hotel room and all that stuff. It's not that way anymore. But but we went out there with our 6 black and white issues of the Jack Kirby Collector and a little handmade display I had for our booth. And, oh, my gosh, it was like this major love fest. Kirby had died the year before, so he wasn't there the year before. And I guess everybody missed him so much, and we were just in the right place at the right time. Our booth was a mob scene. The best moment was when Barry Windsor Smith came walking up with his entourage, and he's in this Armani suit with these alligator shoes, and I'm like, oh, and my wife's like, who is this guy? Because he had like four or five hangers on following him around, And my wife's like, who is this guy? And I'm like, I think that's Barry Windsor Smith. And he walks up to the table. He says, "Are you John?" with his British accent. I'm like, yes, I am. He says, well, I'm Barry, and I brought something for you. And he pulls out this beautiful reproduction copy of an unused Fantastic Four cover that he had in his collection. And that was when I knew, wow, this thing may have legs, because if Barry freaking Windsor Smith takes the time out of his day to make a copy of art from his thing and personally hand deliver it to me at Comic-Con, when I know he had a million things to do at Comic-Con, I thought, wow, this is pretty remarkable. I think we may be doing this a little bit longer. And from there it was Kirby Collector did well. We decided to start a sort of Jack Kirby Collector for all the other artists, and that was called Comic Book Artist, with my good friend John B. Cook edited that. And that won, 5 Eisner Awards, 5 consecutive years for the Eisner Awards for Best Magazine. From there we started doing, you mentioned the All-Star Companions. We got hooked up with Roy Thomas, who I was always a huge fan of his work for Marvel and also for DC. And, his big thing was the Justice Society and All-Star Comics. And he was doing a back section in Comic Artist, revamping his old Alter Ego fanzine of the 60s and doing a little section there. We spun that off into its own magazine. That did well. And Roy said, well, hey, I'd like to do a book on the history of All-Star Comics. Okay, we've never done a book before, but let's give it a try. We've been totally flying by the seat of our pants from day one, and we just kind of figured things out and had the good graces of Jack Kirby fans out there, and everybody loves Jack. And by association, we have gotten more great breaks. If it weren't for Jack Kirby, we would not be doing what we're doing today, and I never forget that for a single day. It's just, he permeates everything we do, even if fans don't see it.
That's an incredible story.
Well, speaking of Kirby, let's go to the main event. The reason John is on the line here is because of this new book from TwoMorrows. It's called Kirby and Lee Stuf Said. And
a little play on Nuff Said, right?
Yes. The caption underneath says, "The complex genesis of the Marvel Universe in its creator's own words." John, I want to turn it over to you for a moment here. How would you, as the author, as the chronicler even, I don't know if author even covers what this book is, how would you describe this book to a layperson?
A layperson. Well, if they've heard of Stan Lee and they haven't heard of Jack, and they've heard of Stan Lee because of the Marvel movies and all the PR for that. And Stan was a great promoter for himself and for Marvel. So I think it's safe to say if anybody's picking this book up and has interest in it, they have some idea who Stan Lee was. They may or may not know who Jack Kirby was. So the first thing is this book is going to give you an idea who Jack Kirby was and what he did. But I think it's also going to give you the most balanced and fair look ever taken at their working relationship, of as close as we can to document who did what on all of all their co-creations of Marvel Comics, from the Fantastic Four to the X-Men, Silver Surfer, the Avengers, the Hulk, right? Thor. Who did what on those? Well, how do you approach this? And that's what I asked myself. Okay, what's the most objective way I can document that history? And the answer was, let's put it in their own words as much as we possibly can. The good news is, well, first of all, Stan Lee did about 3 trillion interviews over the years. And I know that's probably an accurate number because I had to review 3 trillion interviews and decide what to use for the book. But Jack Kirby, you wouldn't think, right? He's an artist sitting in his house all alone, working the wee hours of the morning, drawing these stories, right? You wouldn't think he would be a subject of a lot of interviews, but because Kirby had so many fans, fanzines, every fanzine wanted an interview with Jack Kirby, and he obliged. He'd be at conventions, he'd do interviews. There are interviews in this, quotes from Kirby interviews in this book where they may have only been in a 50-copy print run little mimeographed fanzine, but they're legit interviews, and particularly from the time period they were done in the 60s. And that's the key to the Stuf Said book. Everything's done in chronological order. So we take it from, there's an introductory chapter that kind of talks about Stan and Jack's both histories in the 40s and the 50s and how they both ended up together in 1961 to create Fantastic Four #1. But then that's when the fun starts in the book. Okay, who did what? Who came up with the characters? Who came up with the names? Who came up with the costumes? Whose idea was it to do this book in the first place? And there's a third person that comes into play in this book that a lot of people forget about, and that's Martin Goodman. He was the publisher of Marvel Comics, and the owner, and had a lot of decision-making say in what got produced. He was also a relative of Stan Lee, and that comes into play as well because Stan got some preferential treatment that non-family members at Marvel did not get. Of course. Also, Stan was a company employee, whereas Jack Kirby was a freelancer, so that worked against Kirby as well. I'm not begrudging Stan for this. I mean, hey, more power to him. He had a great situation there, but when it comes to taking credit for things, all that needs to be kind of factored in and weighed. And Stan, as kind of the public mouthpiece of Marvel, got the most say. And actually, he gets more of the say in this book. One of the things I did when I was designing the book was I decided, okay, let's make sure people know who's saying what in this book at a glance. Anytime Stan is quoted, it's all printed in red ink. Anytime Kirby is quoted, it's all printed in blue ink. So at a quick glance, you can tell, okay, wow, there's a whole lot more red ink in here than blue because Stan obviously did a lot more interviews, but there is a lot of Kirby interview quotes as well. And they're all presented chronologically, so you can see how the relationship evolved from Fantastic Four #1 up through, getting to the Galactus trilogy and how that came to be. We take quotes from, the different letter columns and bullpen bulletin pages and things like that and insert them chronologically as well. So you really get a really just exhaustive year by year, month by month account of how the relationship started, how it evolved over time, how it deteriorated, and how things were different after he left. Kirby left in 1970 to go to DC, then came back in 75, how different the relationship was when he came back in 75 as well. We go into the fight Kirby had against Marvel to get his original art back in the 80s. And we cover, their relationship, good and bad between Lee and Kirby all through that period as well. So, if you want the true story of who created what at Marvel Comics and how it evolved the way it did, this book does the trick. And I did want to mention also, the expanded second edition. The first edition sold out 8 weeks after we released it. The response has been just amazing on this book. And I didn't underprint the book by any means. I knew it would be a good seller, but I just had no idea how quickly people would latch onto it. I went back and expanded it, and we've got a second edition coming out at the end of September. It has an extra 16 or so pages of additional material we've discovered since then. It doesn't fundamentally change the story or what you're going to think about the story. It just kind of the additional material augments it. But a key thing in the expanded edition, we have more quotes from Steve Ditko, the co-creator of Spider-Man, because he factors very strongly into this story as well. Without Spider-Man, Marvel, who knows? They certainly wouldn't have been as successful in the 60s, and who knows? They may not have even held on at one point. So Ditko, everybody thinks Ditko was this reclusive guy who never spoke to the press, but that's not exactly true. He was that way after he left Marvel in 66 or so, he was, more or less. But before that, he did a fair number of interviews here and there, and he also wrote his own essays in the 80s and 90s that feed back to what was going on in the 60s. So, but yeah, if you have an interest in Marvel history at all, or in Stan Lee or Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko and how everything evolved, this book is just exhaustive. You're never, I don't think you're ever going to find anybody else crazy enough to do what I did on this book.
Well, I do wonder, for older fans, and, I think it might be tougher for people today if they've just gotten in through the movies. But that Stan Lee versus Jack Kirby kind of fandom was, even when I first started getting into comics in the late 80s, early 90s, it was still an extremely strong presence. Stan didn't do anything, it was all Jack. No, Jack didn't do a lot, it was all Stan. And that fight, I think it's kind of, I don't want to say gone away, but like I said, I don't think modern fans really understand how, these two founding fathers of Marvel Comics, there was a lot of weird pressure around their relationship, and I can't wait to read the book. I really want to see what your opinion and what your take on this is, or what you're taking their words and trying to figure it out, because I don't know that we'll ever get, some of these I'm worried is kind of lost to time. We just may never know, but it's a weird relationship.
It was a very complicated relationship, and one of the things that's in the expanded edition, which came out after the first edition, this gentleman read the first edition, and he contacted me, and he says, I've got this photo I took of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And I'm like, oh, great. But we got a lot of photos of Stan and Jack. So he says, what's special about this one? He says, this was taken at, I think San Diego, I'd have to double check the date, but San Diego Con in 1989, and they're together kind of hugging each other. And I'm like, wow, okay, things were not great between Lee and Kirby in 89. Jack had just finally resolved, not the way he wanted, but just to get it over with, his original art battle with Marvel. And that was the summer that he gave this very scathing interview partially about Stan, to the Comics Journal. So this picture was taken, as near as I can figure, it looks like literally the weekend before Jack started doing that interview. So, and the guy tells the story about it in the book, how this picture took place. He was 15 when he took it and saw Jack and Stan there, and talks about how friendly they were to each other, how they generally seemed happy to see each other. And then for Kirby to have, a week later started doing this interview, where he comes across in a lot of instances kind of bitter, and deservedly so based on the way Marvel treated him. But it was a very, very complicated relationship, and we get into that in the book. And that part of it saddens me, but it also, documenting this through what both men said, it helps me understand it better. I really do understand their complicated relationship a lot better now. I wish it hadn't have ended up the way it did. But at the same time, there are moments like that photo where you go, in spite of it all, there was still a certain fondness these two guys had for each other in spite of their differences. And I can take a little solace in that.
Well, I know Comics Journal was they spared a few punches against Stan Lee. So I always kind of wonder, some of those pieces in interviews, you're like, I don't know.
It's early clickbait.
Here's the thing.
Maybe a little biased. It's tough to tell.
The thing about that controversial Kirby interview that the Journal did is, I remember reading it fresh off the stands when I was, maybe 20 years old or so, and I was like, whoa, Jack, man, you got an axe to grind here. Yeah. So, and wow, this can't be right, because it was totally contrary to the company line that Stan and Marvel was always told about. Oh, how chummy everybody was in the bullpen and how great things were and all this, right? And Jack laid it on the line and told a bunch of things that people were like scratching their head like, wow, maybe Jack's losing here. Maybe he hasn't, he's not super sharp upstairs anymore. This isn't right. This isn't what we've always been told. But if you go through the Stuf Said book, you'll see early on in the 60s, Jack was saying those same things in the 1960s and in the 70s and in the 80s that he was saying in 1990 in this supposedly ridiculous interview. He maybe wasn't saying them quite as rough of a tone, maybe, but he was saying a lot of those same things.
Well,
so this is not he just started making. Well, right, but exactly. But he was not making this stuff up all of a sudden in 1989 or 1990 when he gave that interview. That's the great thing about Stuf Said. You can go back chronologically and see him discussing these same topics in 1965 and 66. So, that sheds a whole lot of new light on Kirby's side of things. And, Stan, rightly or wrongly, gets so much praise, but I think we're seeing, I know we're seeing now, things are starting to turn around. Not that Stan doesn't still get praise and doesn't still deserve praise, but Kirby's starting to get closer to what I think his share should be. And I think that's fantastic. And, for whatever small part we've had in that by keeping his name out there since 1994 when, a lot of people really had kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, Jack Kirby, great. But who's the new guy, right? It saddens me that when Will Eisner passed away, people don't talk about him as much as they used to. Because what an amazing gifted talent. And I think if nothing else for the last, and this is our 25th year doing this. I started the Kirby Collector 25 years ago this month, actually. 25 years plugging away, documenting Kirby's life and history. If we've had a small part in making sure he's not forgotten, then my life for the last 25 years has been very well spent. And this book particularly, I think, is a great document to make sure people understand why he was so important and what he did and what he really contributed to the Marvel Comics era.
We just were talking about this on an episode or two ago. At Walt Disney World, they had an entire Jack Kirby display in one of their sections for the Eternals, right? Obviously, they have a movie coming out, but the fact that in 2019, Disney is devoting part of a theme park to Jack Kirby is pretty mind-blowing.
I really want to go down there just to see the display. I've seen the pictures on TV, but it's like just to be there, just to say that okay, it was real. I saw this. Yeah. The Kirby family invited me in 2017 to the Disney Legends Awards ceremony.
Oh, right.
Where Jack and Stan were both honored as Disney Legends. Yep. And that was, to me, I still get chills thinking about it. It's like, wow, okay, we've got some parity here. Both guys were honored exactly the same. And Stan was extremely gracious in his speech there. And he had just lost his wife like the week before, too. It was amazing he was able to be there at all. It just, to see how things have come full circle now from 1994 when I started the Kirby Collector to see him now and seeing that, this Eternals movie is going to come out, and that's 100% Jack's creation. Is it going to do well? Is it going to flop? I have no idea, right? But just the fact that it's being made, that Disney has enough faith in Kirby's material there to plunk down the dollars to produce something like that, I think that says a lot. And I think, stuff like that Disney World display on Kirby, which I was tickled to see that it has my Jack Kirby checklist book right front and center in the display display section. So, but seeing that they're doing that, they're not just doing an Eternals display; they're doing a Jack Kirby display. Right. That means a lot. And Disney's never been the kind of company that promotes their creators unless their name is Walt Disney, right? So I think it's pretty remarkable to see that Jack's name is being put to the forefront in such a dramatic way. Hey, more power to them. I hope they keep it up, and I hope they take a million other Kirby creations and promote those as well. We'll see. Time will tell.
John, I had a question about the Stuf Said book. You have a lot of great original art pieces in there, actual covers from the books that there was the Incredible Hulk in there, all this wonderful Kirby stuff. It's just a weird question kind of on the back end, but what was it like to have to, did you have to do anything with trademark mark or like get permission, or was it just the people that had the original art sent it in and you can print it?
Oh, or even just getting to see some of that original art to use in the book's amazing.
Well, that's the beauty of having done what we're doing for 25 years now. We have access to thousands of collectors' collections of things. So finding material isn't that big an issue. Finding really rare stuff, a lot of that comes from the Kirby family as well. They gave me access to Jack's old files. And working with the fine folks at the Jack Kirby Museum, which if you're not aware of it, it's kirbymuseum.org. Check out their website. They've amassed a huge treasure trove of digital images of Kirby's art. They go to every major convention, scan the original art dealers. I'll let them scan their Kirby art, which is a great repository of history there, because Jack wrote notes in the margins on the side of his pages, so Stan would know the story he was conveying on his pages and would know how to dialogue it. So reading those notes tell us things about stories that we didn't know. That kind of material all comes into the historical record, and it really plays into the research. That's the thing of this book. It wasn't just researching all these interviews. I had to research art, look at all those margin notes that Kirby put on the sides, look at old scripts that Stan had, compare them to what I actually saw print, and see where things changed and where they were the same. But yeah, it's the beauty is that, with 25 years doing this, I've got such a wealth of information to draw from. I couldn't have done that book 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because we've amassed so much more stuff since then. And just since the first edition sold out, in the 5 months it took me to revise it for the expanded edition, more material came in that we didn't have access to for the original edition. So, it's amazing how everything kind of builds on itself. I'm working on a book right now, publishing several unpublished DC 1970s Kirby stories that DC chose never to publish, and compiling, gotten their permission to publish the stories and also document the history behind them and why DC rejected them. So,
are they like some of that implosion stuff, or just fill-ins, or?
Oh no, this is early 70s stuff.
Okay.
There was. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Jack did 2 experimental magazines. One was called In the Days of the Mob, and the other one was called Spirit World. Jack drew 2 issues of each, but they only published 1 of each, and then just dropped the whole idea. But he had a vision for a whole line of different magazines that would have some comics content, but we sold on newsstands, not in the comic book section, but as actual magazines.
Sure.
And he wanted them produced, full color, elaborate gloss paper, sell for $1 a piece back when comics were going for 15 cents a piece. Do a real upscale high end thing, because he saw the comics industry was on the way out, and he thought this was the future. So DC originally greenlit the project, but then almost immediately lost faith in it because of what it was going to cost. And but Jack did, in addition to In the Days of the Mob and Spirit World, he did 2 other. Well, it started out, it was one called True Life Divorce. It was sort of an anti-romance magazine. Stories about people breaking up instead of getting together. And this stuff is fabulous. This is for DC. This is 1971 DC Comics. This stuff is fabulous. These stories are great. He draws the most beautiful, sexy women you've ever seen. And Kirby's not somebody you think of as drawing beautiful women. They're always that same stock woman. What do you see? The pencil work on these females he drew for these divorce stories. But DC got the art in pencil and said, and we'll go into the history, but part of it has to do with the Catholic Church not wanting to promote divorce. Part of it just has to do with DC chickening out at that point, not wanting to pony up the money to do this. But in that divorce book, one of the stories he drew was about an African-American couple breaking up. And DC said, well, wait a minute. Let's take this one and develop a whole different magazine, an African-American romance book called Soul Love. And by then, the idea was getting so watered down, but Jack, true to form, okay, if that's what you want, I'll do it. And he did 4 more stories for that, and they're pretty good. But and they had, there's so many things. It was you'll read about it in the book, but the history of the times is a lot of why things did or didn't get done. done. They had to redraw all the faces of the black characters because the distributor decided they want them all to look like all the guys to look like Sidney Poitier and all the women to look like Diane Carroll. And so they had Vince Colletta redraw the men and women's faces in these stories. So the original art has tons of whiteout and blue pencil and stuff over it. And then what else? They were going to do a pull-out poster in the magazine of Roberta Flack, the famous singer. But then when she saw the work, she decided, no, I don't want my poster in this publication. So then they ended up just booting that publication. So those pages just sat and never got published. So this new book I'm doing has the divorce stories in it, which are great. Has the solo stories in it, which are you'll see. And then Jack also did a series, a title called Dingbats of Danger Street, which appeared in a comic called First Issue Special. Mm-hmm. They only printed one issue of that. It's a kid gang group. About 4 kids in the slums, and the first issue was published in there, but he did 3 issues, and the other 2 were never published. So we got DC's okay to publish the second and third issues of Dingbats of Danger Street, which is actually a personal favorite of mine. And if people are judging it based on the first issue, they're going to be very pleasantly surprised when they read the second one, especially to see how much more serious the tone is and how gorgeous the art is. But we go into the history of why those never got published as well. So it's a really, really fun book. That one's, gosh, I'm 3 weeks late on it because when people see what I did to it, they'll understand why it took so much longer to produce. But I've got a great surprise in there for some people. I think it's going to blow people's minds. But that one hopefully will be out end of November. But the book is called Jack Kirby's Dingbat Love. Because it has the Dingbats of Danger Street in it and 2 different love projects that were never published. So
that's wild.
So John,
it's crazy stuff.
I got one final Stuf Said question for you before we do the promotion and let you shuffle off into the night. I know we're keeping you up late. This book is just incredible, and I'm wondering, looking back on it now, 2 editions, what's one thing that surprised you to learn when you were assembling all this? I'm sure there's more than one, but just for the sake of not losing your mind, what's a thing that you came away that you really didn't know before that caught you off guard?
Well, it's sort of a 2-part answer for that, I think. But I'll give you the 2 parts very quickly. One is how consistent Kirby was in what he said from the 1960s up till his passing in the 1990s about how things took place. And the other part of that is how Stan's story on things wasn't as consistent. When you read Stan's quotes in the 60s about how things are playing out and then start reading how they changed a little bit in the 70s and then by the 80s and then in the 90s, subtle things creep in, and it's stuff like in the 60s he gave an interview. He says, we was talking about the creation of the Silver Surfer and Galactus, and he says, I think he said, I forget who came up with the name Galactus. I think Jack did. That's in the 60s. And then, of course, in the 70s, I came up with the name Galactus. It was all mine. And then he stuck to that from then on. And we touch on that in the book as well, the motivations for some of the things that were said in some of these interviews over the years. I think I know people will find it a fascinating read because the response was so great, and I'm still getting mail on the book, people talking about what an eye-opening experience it was reading this book. But I think that's really a thing. I found Kirby to be very consistent in what he said, and I found Stan. Now, I'm not saying Stan's lying, but I'm saying, different motivations creep in over time. Memories change over time. Stan always said he had the world's worst memory. I think that's partially true. But you know how it is. It's sometimes you get selective memories. There's things you want to remember and things you don't want to remember. And I find that myself as I get older. If I don't write things down and document them, I'll get things wrong. So, but yeah, that's the beauty of doing that chronological format in the book. You can really start at the beginning of the book and read to the end and go, wow, that's not what he was saying 10, 20 years ago. So,
well, I kind of feel like Stan Lee is one of those guys that just had to tell the same stories over and over and over. And I think you kind of get used to kind of a how can I get through this quickly, tell the story as fast as possible, because I have to just keep doing the same interviews every year, over and over. So I wonder if some of that just like, I could just simplify this as much as possible, random interview.
But the best one was not even simplifying. There was a couple of instances, and we document in the 70s, where after it's clearly been laid out in various interviews in the 60s how these characters were created and who was involved. And all of a sudden in the 70s, he writes this essay for some major magazine. And he says, I remember creating Spider-Man. I was sitting there and I saw a spider crawling up the wall. And blah, blah, and it's like, wait a minute, this sounds like Bob Kane saying he saw a bat fly in the window from Batman. And this is the first we ever heard about a spider climbing up the wall. Prior to that, that was never once mentioned. Well, Stan's a creative guy and a creative writer, and I'm sure he was trying to juice this article up he had to write, and it sounded good. But, when you go back and compare it to the historical record, it's just total hogwash. So, and there were a couple instances like that with Stan, I think, over the years where he said things and maybe thought better of it later. But at the time, this was, hey, I'm in a major TV interview. What's something exciting I can say that'll interest the listeners? So, he was a promoter and a great promoter. And, sometimes when you promote things, you shade things a little bit to keep them more interesting. So.
Well, speaking of promoting, let's hear, you got the book coming up. And Kevin, I know you have a little involvement too.
Well, it was my pleasure to just offer some assistance on the expanded version. But, this is John's labor of love.
Yep.
I've now read the book. John, I believe, I read the first edition. I read your expanded edition. So I've read it twice, line by line. And I'm getting no cut of this, so I'm saying this just as a fan to anybody who's listening and is all interested in this subject matter. This book is amazing. I learned something new on every page. Just the pictures alone make it worth picking up. But then the text as well is just an invaluable piece of comics history that anyone who's interested in this at all, I can't recommend it highly enough. And this next thing I'm going to say is an absolute compliment. I would have to put the book down and give my brain a break because it was like going to school, but in a super entertaining class where you want to be there. But I'm absorbing so much information, and it's just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Well, Kevin, you just perfectly described the experience I had writing the book. Because I'd be like, wow, look at all this great stuff. And I just have to stop and give my brain a rest for a day or so. And then I discover, some new tidbit that would lead to another tidbit, and then do a little more research. It's like, I see where this fits now. And it was like this amazing, fun jigsaw puzzle to do, but it was exhausting. And thank you, Kevin, for your input on it. After you saw the first edition, you read through it and said, this is great. There's a few typos here, that kind of thing. If you're ever going to do an expanded edition, I'd like to point them out to you. And that's exactly the kind of assistance we love.
And it was a great time working with you on the expanded one. I looked forward to all your emails because it was like getting a early Christmas present, getting to read the book again. Which I know may sound like homework, but again, I love this subject matter anyway, and to see somebody put a package of such love and care together, whether you're on the side of Stan did everything and Jack was just an art robot, or Kirby got screwed by the self-promoting Stan Lee, wherever you come down on this, or you're in the middle, it's not only those two guys, it's Ditko, it's Wally Wood, it's John Severin, it's Roy Thomas, it's all of these other voices that come to life in these pages. The way you've chosen the quotes is like you're hearing these people speak, and it's absolutely wonderful. And we'll let you promote it now, where readers can find it, when it might be available.
Yeah.
We are waiting on the shipment to arrive. Hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, we will have copies and be shipping them to all of our pre-order customers that ordered off of our website. You mentioned the web address. It's TwoMorrows.com, and that's spelled TWOMORROWS. So that's one way to get it. You can also order it through your local comic book shop. Make sure they require request the expanded second edition because the first edition is sold out and they will not be able to get more copies of that one. So you can get it on Amazon.com as well. The second edition probably won't be available there until mid-October or so by the time they get the copies in. Should be in stores, though, by the end of September. And as I said, we'll be shipping them to subscribers and customers probably around middle of September, September 20th, somewhere in there.
Fantastic. John, it was great talking to you. Good luck with the book. I know we're going to get some copies here and at the store. Can't wait to see what I'm now super excited about that Kirby book coming up. All the DC unpublished stuff. Yeah,
it's just because you hate Marvel.
What the heck?
I really love my question.
That's the running joke, John.
But believe me, guys, you will be blown away by this Kirby work. You may love it, you may hate it. This new romance dingbats thing, but you are not going to be bored by it. Absolutely. So.
I can't wait to read it.
I'm thinking that when they do the Jack Kirby, biography movie or whatever, John's going to probably be heavily talked to about things.
Maybe I'll be old enough to actually play Kirby in it. Who knows? This could be my big acting break. You never know. So.
Well, they did that Ditko documentary. Maybe they should do a Kirby one too. So
I would not doubt it. We will see it in our lifetime. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. All right, John, it was great talking to you, and good luck, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Talk soon, John.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
And we're back. Thank you to John for being on here. I know we kept him up late. He's on the East Coast, so
I don't think he minded. He was rather engaged.
Well, it is great topics, and I'm very excited to get the book. We are going to carry his book in the store here, so if you're interested,
it's on the hub.
It'll be on the hub. It'll be it should all because of the way graphic novels and books are, like, we have to order them in advance. So I'm not sure if it's still there, but when it's in stock, we'll have it online and everything. So
and we'll have the second edition. The expanded edition, right?
Toby is licking a little Panda Bear cookie.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know how hopped up on Panda Bear cookies these two at the end are?
Just, it's all sugar, man. All sugar.
Sugar and whatever else Asian people put in it.
You know, Ryan, if you really just want to steer right into how this podcast threatens to go, here's what you do. Have a Patreon-backed all-night podcast, like a slumber party, where we just record all night. People might leave, come in. You
never know.
You can live
fall asleep at the mic. You have to listen to the whole thing because you don't know what could happen.
I'd fall asleep at the mic.
There could be sugar, alcohol, no promises.
By the way, these Panda Bears are probably 20 years old and still totally fine to eat.
You can live stream on Patreon, so maybe we'll do that someday.
There you go.
Oh my God, that would
a night at the comic book shop.
Because the rest of us would be asleep at
Oh, dude, I got a live starting 2 o'clock in the morning, man.
The host would be asleep
at 9:45.
Yeah.
So I'm going to follow him up pretty quick.
Yeah, 2 a.m. I'm bright awake. You guys are all in trouble.
This will be the Toby show for the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That's when he hits his prime.
I can stay till about 1.
Oh man, 2 o'clock, 2:30.
Toby's on all cylinders.
Charlie with his giant coffee mug.
I'm actually kind of just excited thinking about this.
2 o'clock is when the delirium starts kicking in with Toby. And
that'll be the prime listening
get
time.
Some random messages.
Can we do this on a Christmas night or something?
Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas night.
People have family to be with.
Dude. What? You guys have family? You guys have families?
You have families?
What's wrong with you guys?
We have a couple topics to talk about before we move on to the questions.
We can make it a Toby show.
Bunch of Patreon and some questioners on Twitter. We're going to get to those. But first, I do want to talk about the Joker movie. Scott Shea is flabbergasted at this. But it's currently sitting at 89% on Rotten Tomatoes.
No.
It got an 8-minute standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival.
I heard
this past weekend.
I heard it was awful.
Bryce Larson tell you that, or who said
Bryce?
And Bryce Larson quotes told you that
it was awful.
Were they there?
They were standing outside,
listening into
next
the movie
door at a donut shop.
Well, I think what we're getting off the internet is a wide range of, oh my God, we're talking Oscars, to this is the new potential Psycho that somebody will emulate, right? It's this huge swath of what this movie's going to do, and just seeing 2 trailers, I have no idea. Like I'm curious.
I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good.
It looks to be amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Robert De Niro was in this movie.
Yeah, yes.
Like,
Yeah, I'm crazy excited for this. I mean, if you go back a bunch of
I'm
episodes,
not excited.
you are
I just think
crazy.
it's going to be good. I'm not excited for it, but I just think it's going to be really good.
like early on when they announced a Joker movie.
Fucking ding dong!
Somebody's already ordering.
Yeah.
Kirby and
Turn it
Lee
off.
Stuf Said.
Why do I gotta do
Okay,
it?
you're the
Because you're the
closest.
closest that knows
Someone
how to
didn't
do
mute it. Brock, that was your job.
No, it's not my job. It's his job.
Anyway,
Someone's
Joker
job.
movie. If you go back, I mean, I'm sure my earliest comments of the Joker movie is, why the hell would they make a Joker movie? That makes no sense.
Well, again, and
But when I saw the very first shot, I was like, oh, and now I'm in.
Look,
this is going to be incredible.
when they announced this
They
movie,
said Joker movie, and again, if it's a DC movie at this point, I'm hesitantly all in. I'm all in.
You're
thinking
all
that-
in.
I'm
either
I'm
way.
totally all in.
I'm in either
I
way.
will
Look,
see
I'm
it
in either way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a DC movie. I'm all in, and it has
Cautiously?
No. I'm all in.
All right.
I'm all in to
So,
go watch a hot piece of trash. I'm
I don't
all
think it's
into
gonna be-
whatever.
I think it's going to be good.
I'm all, but I'm thinking that
Kevin?
65% of it is going to be garbage.
Nah, I think since they were going to do it, since we're going to make it, I have a feeling that they had an ace up their sleeves.
I don't trust your feelings.
If you look
You
at
should, man. You should trust my leg at least.
Todd Phillips, the
Is that what
director,
that is?
Yeah.
has had a lot of interviews where he talked about his inspiration, and it's clear Taxi Driver. No, I've actually never seen.
No, it's very Taxi Driver-ish.
I've never seen.
Raging Bull?
Nope. What's the other movie? That's
The one where the dude gets hot and then loses his shit?
Ghost Rider.
No. He physically gets hot.
What are you getting at?
He's stuck in traffic.
Toby's talking about falling down.
Falling down. Yes.
What's Ryan
That's my
talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about the actual movie that the Joker was heavily inspired by.
That's not
King
Taxi
of
Driver.
Comedy. So I've never seen King of Comedy. I really want to though, because I want to see how this.
I will loan you the King of Comedy as soon as you give me back my copy of Dune. That's growing roots in your.
Dude, you have
man.
You still have Kevin's copy of Dune?
What you guys talking
Have you
about?
ever seen
Can
Dune?
I borrow it? Because I'll get it back
I
to
feel
you before he does.
you've never seen Dune.
He's
So,
never seen it, and he
there's-
likes David Lynch.
You've never seen Dune?
Wait,
There's
the
ve-
movie or the
Have you ever
TV
read
show?
Dune?
movie.
No, fuck that. There's very few David Lynch things I have not seen, and Dune is one of them. But moving on.
How have you not? I have seen Dune.
I am now way excited for Joker.
So, Ryan,
Now there is.
hold on. How long have you had a copy of Dune?
Did you lend me the fan cut, or was that? I think I have Brian's copy of Dune as well.
You have two copies
Okay.
of Dune?
So I'm speaking only of the copy of mine that went into your black hole. It's easily a year. Easily.
Wait,
was
so
it-
You've had at least
Was it-
one, if not two.
Oh, I'm pretty
copies
sure.
Of Dune.
I think Brian just gave me a fan edit cut. That
so. Now
they
you
had.
own one also.
And what copy?
And
did
you
you
still
give me?
haven't
Just
seen
the
it.
regular
The theatrical,
Blu-ray?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I can tell Ryan really wants to get out of here, and we're going on these super random tangents. And he's
Anyway,
like,
I just wanna
slowly, he's like, you could see the meter.
I just
is
wanna
like
talk about
going up.
Joker.
Yeah, it's going up. Slowly, it's going up.
Look, if you guys want to do a Twin Peaks podcast, I'm down. Okay, like fucking tonight. Okay,
could-
but for right now,
All night long?
Save that
all night?
Save that topic because
Patreon.
we're going to need air filling time in that all night recording.
You know,
so save Twin Peaks for that.
You turned me off on Twin Peaks because your wife is like texting me going, you should really watch Twin Peaks because I like dark. It's like it because
you'd
she's like-
hate it. You'd hate
yeah.
it.
So you show me this fucking clip and goes, this fucking clip is excellent, and I'm watching this kind of clip as freaky
you'd
and weird
hate-
as
you'd
hell.
hate Twin Peaks.
The fucking reverse shot that you showed me, yeah.
I can't imagine
yeah.
you like Twin Peaks.
You pack that shit up and put it back in your drawer, please.
So all I will tell you, Ryan, to end the topic you were just mentioning, The King of Comedy is my favorite Scorsese movie, but one time with a group of friends, when we all got together to watch a movie and I vouched for The King of Comedy, we started with 6 people, and at the end of that movie, there were
You had no
literally
friends?
myself and one other person left.
Oh, no.
No one could take it.
Oh.
Because it's very much not a general appeal movie
right.
at
Your
all.
favorite, and yet
Which is
not
fine.
a general.
Which is
I
fine.
would not just walk up to anybody and go, "Oh, you got to watch The King of Comedy."
Wait, isn't
the
Taxi
best.
Driver a Scorsese also?
Yeah.
Marty.
I just want it to be a great standalone origin that's not solid. That's not the concrete origin.
Well, it's not going to be, right? Whatever they do in the movie is not going to translate over to the comics.
Whatever you want it to be, man. I mean, if you're going to think that's going to be the concrete origin, let it be. If you don't want it to be, don't let it be. I mean, perception, right?
Well, I would be very afraid of DC taking the success of the movie and be like, yeah, let's make this the origin.
Dude, I can totally see that going that direction. Those guys, it's like
I did for a really long time thought,
well, they're like,
well, would you be more scared of that, or would you be more scared of hearing the announcement John C. Reilly is Clayface in the standalone Clayface movie?
No,
I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, no.
John C. Reilly is Clayface?
No.
If Joker's successful,
nope, you guys are all wrong. It's the dude from Guardians.
No, what I'm saying is
that is John C. Reilly.
No,
when the movie,
big guy.
Batista?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
When the X-Men movies were starting to really push out, Marvel was like, they're going to do the origin of Wolverine eventually. They're going to talk about it. We have to beat them to the punch. We have to do our own take on it. We have to do the official take because the movie's just going to make up some bullshit.
For the longest time, I thought the 89 Batman movie was the actual Joker's origin. I thought that him jumping in... Well, he didn't jump into it, but him falling into the chemicals was the Joker origin.
It is. I mean, that is.
He's just not the killer of the Wayne.
He's not.
All right,
He's not Joe Chill.
But look.
We have Killing Joke, right, which sets him up as like a failed comedian, stand-up comedian, which sounds like this movie takes some influence from, right? You have the 89 Batman movie. You have Dark Knight, which sort of he tells the story a few times, but it's all lies.
So good.
Dark Knight. That's where Heath Ledger did the various origins. Like that was perfect. Right. Like that was just that's because it's chaos. You don't know. So amazing, and the pencil magic was just phenomenal.
With this Joker movie, it has the potential to be incredible, but I don't want DC to take it and implement it into the books. I want it to just stand alone as its own thing. We don't need a sequel. We don't need more people involved. We don't need this character appearing in other things. This is just its own thing, and that is totally fine. I can't imagine they'll do more with this version of the Joker. But I don't know. Stranger things have happened. Comes out in a couple weeks. It's like just shy. I think just over a month. It's for first week of October.
I'm excited.
What's that?
It's soon.
Yeah. Very, very soon. The only other big thing we want to talk about here, we got some
when's
questions.
that new Terminator coming?
I haven't a clue.
Dude, that trailer looks tasty, man.
I'm all in.
Dude, that new trailer looks super tasty.
The last Terminator movie I saw was Terminator 2. So,
well, that's the only Terminator you need to see before this one.
What about Rambo?
We'll see.
Oh, I'm all in on Rambo too, but
I'm all in
Terminator.
On Rambo also.
I have to say though, you put the right people back in charge, and it makes all the Terminator movies since T2 look like amateur hour, like complete amateur hour.
It's because it was.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but.
Before we get into the questions, though, I did want to talk about Marvel Comics 1000.
Yeah.
We had...
That She-Hulk cover is freaking amazing.
Did you open it?
What do you mean open it?
The comic?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
There's even a page by J. Scott Campbell in there, so yes,
so you looked at that one page.
Well, I did flip through it first.
How did it sell?
I mean, we did sell out. I ordered very little, right? I got a decent amount of people asking for it.
The pre-orders on it were...
Pre-orders, we sold a decent amount of the variant covers, but not a ton.
No.
Right?
I want another She-Hulk one.
I could try.
Yeah. Well, you already know that.
We did get another stack back in. Scott, if you would like a copy, it's right there.
I'm looking at it right in front of me.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're looking at Marvel Puzzle Quest right now.
Look, I'm in a mid-hop.
Ticket to Ride.
I'm in a mid-hop, and yeah.
Now, one thing that was different than the copy I read, because we talked about it briefly in the podcast too a number of weeks back, because I got to read an advance copy of it that Marvel sent out.
Yeah, you let me take a look at it as well.
Yeah, they actually changed one of the pages. And this got a lot of buzz last week before it came out. The Mark Waid piece with Captain America. He had a big piece talking about that how good America is, but all the problems that it has and how it can get better, and how we should never strive to be better. They changed it to a very different text piece about hiding behind a mask and why he wears a mask. It's a very different tone. Let's just a lot less politically charged, if you will. So that was kind of a weird start to the actual release of this book.
The first one?
Captain America. It's like a single page.
It's the first one you see. The first.
This one with the.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you could read Mark Waid's original text piece online, it's like I said, it's very, very different. Now,
did Mark Waid get to write this again?
I don't know.
Or did some dude go?
It's credited to Mark. It's credited to Mark Waid, but I'm not sure. And rereading it, I think my original complaint stands with this book. Now, if you don't know what Marvel Comics 1000 is, it's 80 pages, 80 different stories. 80 pages, 60 different stories. One is a 20-page story that's by 20 different artists, one page each, spread throughout the book, written by Al Ewing, chronicling a group of people who are there at the start of the golden age of Marvel Comics, all the way up to their kind of current incarnation. It's a sort of it's a very, very first page, Brock, if you pulled it out. What do they call themselves? Something. What
8 bells, you're on time, boys.
Yeah, I can't remember what they call themselves.
I like to add that NBA legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, the X-Men. The Men of X.
The Men of X, yeah.
And the scientists. So they've taken, Ewing's taken these different characters and kind of made them the same team.
Right. So it was these Golden Age characters that now sort of go through the history of the Marvel Universe, looking for, the Eternity Mask. Eternity Mask. Yeah. And they're going to pick up on that later.
Can you verify that this Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is actually Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
It is. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I would love to get his autograph.
Yeah.
Now
as
the other
artist,
the other
writer.
59 stories in this book are completely disconnected, random, one-off, one-page stories by some pretty incredible people, but they have nothing to do with anything. Yeah. They're just this random hodgepodge of little one-page stories.
Wait, what do you mean?
I do know that. I've read the entire book.
The thing is,
you don't know because there's a late solicitation for Marvel 1001.
Yeah, which is going to have like 40 more stories.
And I'm like, look, in mid-2000, the Young Avengers was a book, and you got Alan Heinberg who did the Young Avengers book.
No, he means tied into the Eternity Mask story.
Yeah.
The
Eternity Mask
I think
story
it's more like a history homage, right?
Which is not really what this was originally pitched as, right?
Okay, fair
It was
enough.
supposed to be an 80-page, like one-page story, like through the history of Marvel Comics in chronological order, exploring like this Eternity Mask and this weird kind of mystery. But that's not what it is, right?
I see. Okay,
it's a very different book than I think what people were being sold on. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying they didn't do a good job promoting this. The name alone, Marvel Comics 1000, is so fucking meaningless, right? It should just be called like Marvel Comics. Right?
It should have been called Marvel Comics 80 years.
80 years, sure. Exactly right. So there's all this weird stuff going against it, and this is everything that happened before we ordered it, right? And I hammered Marvel about some of these points, and I'm like, guys, you've got to fix this stuff, because I can't in good faith order this book because I don't know that there's interest in it. Now, that said, we did have more people asking for it than I anticipated. It wasn't like crazy, but I should have got more copies, obviously, right? But we're still talking like 1% of what we got or 2% of what we got of Action Comics or Detective Comics, right? I mean, I'm baffled at how little interest there was in this book, because I think Marvel's marketing and Marvel's tone for what this book really was. If they said this is a one-shot book that's going to examine, forget the real plot, right? If it was 80 pages by 80 incredible creative teams, all one-page stories focusing from 1939 to 2019, with all these.
That's why it says on the book, though, 80 years, 80 creative teams.
But if they were just this, like, I could hand this book to someone forever and be like, here's 80
that would be cool,
awesome
really
little
cool stories.
Yeah. And that's not what this is.
And the thing is, it's like,
I think the one-page stories might be a little too short too.
But of course, but there's not.
But the thing is, it's like, even with what they were doing with the years in chronological order and stuff, some of the years, the stuff that they picked,
it doesn't make sense.
Right, there was stuff that was out that was far superior. Like 1992, there was nothing about the X-Men.
A lot of it's not in any sort of order.
And there's and I think that some of it is like serious, and some of it is this joke stuff.
It's like,
and then
yeah.
There's no real solid tone throughout the book.
They have annotations on a few of the pages that are like 1974, the first appearance of whatever.
That's the stuff I kind of dug.
No, I wanted more of that, right? I wanted them to have each of those actually be important to what the year is.
Sure,
and a lot of it just feels like random, like what does it have to do with anything?
Well, I think they just took creators from that year and what was the hot book.
But it's not even that for a lot of them. It's very random what is where. So, if you have a first appearance of characters, what is the 1961? Is there, like, does it even have one? I mean, because how is that not Fantastic Four, right? I don't...
You know, my big problem with this book is it looks like an Overstreet guide than a cover book. Yeah.
Well, the 61 page is the Steve Rude page. It has the Thing. It has Cap.
It's
the Thing.
Yeah. But I mean, shouldn't that be a?
But then you flip back to the 1950. Is that 55?
Yeah. What?
And it's Alex Ross.
No, it's 59.
It's a 59. Wordless Hulk.
Alex Ross Hulk painting.
That has nothing to do with anything.
But in Marvel time, the Hulk wasn't even existing at 1959.
And that's the thing that makes no sense. If
every people that were existing in that time, comic-wise, that are now Marvel characters are a Hammond Torch, a Submariner, Captain America, Toro.
The thing is,
it says 59 is when Tales to Astonish started, and since Tales to Astonish once featured the Hulk.
I think it would have been cooler to have like a giant monster story for Tales to Astonish. Like, give me Think Fan Foom.
Well, when did Jim Lee's X-Men come out? That was 91? 91?
Yep.
Yeah, and for them, 91
they're not going to get Jim Lee.
New Mutants.
Well, but that's Deadpool Cable, so that's fine.
And they're not going to get Jim Lee.
So I think what I would say about this comic is, having read all of it, I was actually interested in the Ewing story, The Mask. I found it kind of interesting the way it wove through the history, but then every time they cut away from it, I was like,
a distraction.
Come on.
Where's the rest?
Because some of it was what Brock was saying, the tone is so all over the place as you read this really dark chapter, and then there's this wacky, funny one page.
My note to Marvel was, put that story in the front. And it just 20 pages straight.
Well, the problem is, some of the chronological stuff tied in.
Almost none.
Almost none, but some of it tied in. But that was the problem, was that you're trying to stretch into this thing. You're like, huh?
Yeah, almost none of them.
And then they have a Star Wars page.
Yeah.
They do? Yeah. And then the thing I was
I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with that.
The thing I was most looking forward to,
the Miracle Man, or Miracle Man page.
You're going to get this right
every
eventually.
Time. Miracle Man.
The Miracle Man page was the most random, like even more disconnected than Star Wars, if you can imagine that. And I just like, why is it even in here?
Yeah.
And the milestone that they're celebrating with that page is, it says Marvel begins publishing Miracle Man.
Yeah.
And also ends publishing.
And also,
They forgot to include that part.
Because that's not done yet.
No, it's never picked back up. They solicited the reprint issues of Silver Age, which were the last published issues, and they were going to finish it, and they never did. So they never even started that. It's I like the attempt, but man, and
execution on this is...
and for being the book that Marvel was going to sell 1 million copies of, good luck, guys. You know, this is just not
1 million.
It's not
they're
the
not
book.
even going to make 100,000.
This is not
Wasn't this the book Cebulski called out they were going to sell 1 million?
He said no.
Oh.
I said, bullshit. This was the book you said you were going to sell 1 million copies of.
Well, the thing is like once
what are you thinking about selling? I think they're going to sell 100,000.
I'm sure it broke. I'm sure it 150 probably. I mean, I could see.
How many different covers did you get?
I know there's like 16 covers or something crazy, right?
I saw some sweet covers.
Yeah. Well, they did what DC did. They have the decade covers, so they have a 30s cover and 40s cover and 50s cover, right?
The She-Hulk one, I'm telling you, man.
I saw it.
That was the best one.
You know where I saw it?
Yeah, they definitely sold
Marvel Puzzle Quest.
Oh, Jesus.
They definitely sold a lot of copies because it's a Marvel book. It's a big anniversary. They had some deep discounts. They had a shitload of variant covers. So yes, clearly they sold a lot, but ain't no 1 million copy seller. But you know, hey, you got 20 years, Marvel. Do it right on your 100th birthday and figure it out.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where we have, with the way we have technology now, it's like the reaction
to this when it was first announced was people were like genuine, like, oh, what's all, because they were doing the name popping, right?
Yeah,
like, and it was like, okay, this is, what are you doing? This is weird. What are you doing with it? And then the second that Marvel Comics 1000 came up, everybody on the internet was like, huh?
Yeah.
This is stupid. Why are you calling it this? You're just trying to pull action and detective. Yep. Don't do this, Marvel. Everybody was screaming at them to just cut that. And they still kept it. Yep. And then they're going to double down and go, oh, we're doing a 1001.
You know what this sounds
like?
Which
is going to sell nothing.
It sounds like in that thermo flask right there, you're drinking a lot of Haterade.
Oh, yeah.
And 1001 is just more of the one-page stories. They basically,
Al Ewing, right?
And
they
in
had
that other bottle right there, you're drinking some wine.
They had a bunch of leftover stories, so that's what's getting dumped into the 1001, and that is the end. There was nothing past that.
I would have rather seen...
Wait, hold on. There's a 1001?
Yeah, yes. So when you tell me I'm drinking Haterade, I'm like, no, I'm just telling the truth.
I would have rather seen the Ewing story and then the whole backside of the book. And I know they're wanting to bring in a bunch of writers, so this wouldn't work for that premise. I would have rather seen a collection of pinups all through the history of Marvel, but with modern artists
that would have been cool.
Drawing like, here's a Golden Age Invaders pinup page. Yep. Move on to this. Then Giant Man, the Wasp.
The decade covers we got. Like those
but do one for every year. You could do 80 pinups.
Yeah.
And the Ewing story. I think that would be an incredible issue.
You could have like a 240-page book, all right? You get one pinup, one story, and one page documenting that year in Marvel Comics,
or just
right?
Some essays in general that talk about Marvel over the years.
How many pages is Marvel 1000?
80. So there's a lot of pages. I'm not saying it's a comic book, like a book, right? There's really good potential here. I like the idea. I like the format. I don't like what they did with it. I feel like it was a huge missed opportunity. This is a book that should be on the counter forever, that I can hand to every single person that walks in, and it's going to be something that I'm hopefully sell out of and have no copies for my baggage bin. So it's unfortunate. We're going to talk some questions here. We had a nice long interview, and I don't want to get this podcast going on too long. So let's
hour 4.
I just got here.
Midnight hour. 2 a.m., 2:30.
Some of us have to get up and work tomorrow, Toby. Verum Libertas on...
Where are these questions coming from?
Patreon.com/Comic-Conspiracy.
Sweet.
Has Jason Aaron's Thor run tied Walt Simonson as the best overall for the character? I mean, I don't know about tied. It's definitely... it's the only modern, right? Straczynski would be the only other possibility.
But he never finished.
Right.
I mean, if Straczynski actually got to finish, perhaps, but no, modern Jason Aaron for sure.
Yeah, I would say it's tough to be as good. I mean,
I actually don't like to pit modern against classic.
No.
They're different beasts, I feel like.
But the run was...
It was amazing.
Impressive.
Yeah,
and he's
waiting
almost
for
done,
that giant omnibus that I can't carry. I need Charlie to carry for me, and I just read out of his hands.
If you said Jason Aaron, Simonson, Lee, and Kirby, that's 3 great Thor runs.
Yep.
Yeah, you could have a discussion.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean...
You could discuss what order you'd put those in, but I don't think there's a...
Right.
I don't think you knock out any of those 3.
No. I don't... I'm trying to think if there's another run in there that we missed that...
For me, the Aaron run I think is difficult because the change of artist.
Well,
in the last
his next question: does Marvel's insistence on multiple relaunches drag down its potential too much? And
well, that's just Marvel's problem in general.
We have Thor.
You had God of Thunder, which was what he started
God of Thunder,
with, who was the artist?
It was Thor.
It was a Sinjik.
No, I can't remember who did. I can't remember who. I don't remember. I mean, they changed artists so many times. There was God of Thunder. There was Thor. There was Mighty Thor. Then there was Thor again.
Then there's Thor again.
And then
we got renumbered to Legacy numbering.
Right.
Then it got renumbered and artist changed to Del Mundo, which
is just Thor again. And now King Thor. Right. So that's 6 different volumes.
But the thing is like again,
it's infuriating.
I stopped reading after. I stopped reading like at the tail end before it went back to the Legacy numbering.
Mm-hmm.
And then Del Mundo, I'll just pick it all up in collection and finish it when it's done.
Yeah.
So it's
and that's the thing with a lot of these. That's the thing with reading today. I think when you go through, it's if there's a lull for more than one book, I will not hesitate to drop it. not hesitate. When I was buying when I was buying a Waltz run, you're not skipping one because you have a complete numbered from X to X.
All right.
And that's just the way comics were then. Yep. Now, again, I've picked up and dropped all sorts of stuff. Even, if I truly wanted a complete Spider-Man run, I'd have to go back and get things that I don't have because it's not part of them. It's not part of my run.
Yeah.
Until they legacy number them so they can get number 800 published. And then you're like, wait a second. Where's the numbering platform that you need for this one?
Yeah, I don't mind if they want to restart a book when a new creative team takes over, but when you do it in the middle of the guy's same run 6 times, there's no point.
We changed artist. We got to do a new one.
We changed title.
Well, I think in the Angina Omnibus
he's
is just
no
going to be
a
his
woman.
fun.
Let's
Right.
switch.
Yeah,
He's a king now. Let's switch. He's got a chopped off arm. Let's switch. He's got a gray beard. Switch. He's got.
Well, then you throw in the Unworthy Thor miniseries that was just like this random side thing,
and War of the Realms.
War of the Realms. So it's like there. It's something that I think when it's all collected together, I think we'll do really, really well.
Hopefully.
But again,
we are getting the first. Like they have these single volumes coming out. The very first volume, Thor by Jason Aaron, has came out. So
like hardcover, or
softcover.
Yeah, see,
that is the way to read it. Tim says Hickman is doing something cool with Moira McTaggart in the dual X-Men books right now by taking an obscure character and turning him into so much more. If you could take one obscure but consistent character in any series from anywhere and turn them into a focal point of that series, who would it be?
The question.
And how would you do it? Now, I do want to.
Obscure enough.
I don't think Moira is obscure.
Well, but the question had its own title before, and Moira's just been a supporting.
I want to.
I was just thinking, no normal person knows who the question is.
I want to read Chris Lockhart's question here because he had. It's not connected, but I think it actually is because they've done similar stuff. He said, "Who is your favorite normal, non-powered supporting character?" Mine was Rick Jones during the Peter David run of Incredible Hulk, when Rick was an aspiring rock star sidekick to the Grey Hulk and Professor Hulk. So Rick Jones is a perfect example of a character that was just this thing on the side.
But he got powered later on.
They did stuff with, right? Yeah. And Moira is kind of in that same sort of fashion. I know Snapper Carr. Yeah. They've done similar things
Jimmy,
with
Lois, Alfred.
So like
Jarvis.
Just a normal dude, basically. So, like, Nightwing doesn't count because Nightwing doesn't have powers.
Well, he is a superhero, though.
He's a major character in the DC universe.
Well, now he is.
He always was.
He has his own
he was a sidekick.
But he was a major character.
Well, anyway, that was just a question I was going to. It's not going to say him.
I won't go too off topic here, but. Many people do believe, and I actually agree with this, that Dick Grayson is the single most important linchpin character in the DC universe.
Thank you.
So he connects every single aspect of the DC universe.
Did you watch New Young Justice?
No, not yet.
You should.
New season. I've only watched the first half. But
it's too
I think Rick Jones is a case where they took this obscure, not obscure, but this minor character, and they've done stuff with him. Made him a superhero. They've made him way more important.
He was also the sidekick to numerous people, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then they just kind of, more recent years, he's just kind of pushed off. I mean, they don't really do anything with him anymore.
Ready for mine? My favorite. Is this my favorite non-powered supporting?
Well, favorite normal.
Demolition Man?
Well, J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh.
Ooh.
Well, I'll come back at you and say that. Oh.
Well, there's two questions.
I like Robbie Robertson.
Really?
Back from that era when they worked together. I always liked the scenes with those two characters together.
I liked Robbie too. Yeah. What about who's the writer that Daredevil always is with?
Oh, Ben Urich.
Ben Urich. I love Ben.
I like Ben Urich actually.
Yeah, the non-powered supporting character,
geeking out over non-powered,
and the obscure character you want put into the center of a major story. Not the same questions, but I think they have a lot of crossover. I think a lot of those connect.
Betty Brant.
Because if you look at what
Spider-Man's got a lot of good ones.
If you look at what Bendis has been doing with
Flash
Superman
Thompson
recently.
Is one of them.
If you look what Bendis has been doing with Superman recently, Amanda Waller and Lois Lane, I mean, they are clearly not minor characters or obscure characters, but they are non-powered characters who have been put front and center into a major event
Rucka did
with
it
Event Leviathan.
the GCPD in Gotham Central.
Yeah,
That was really, really well done. I mean, those are characters that have always been in the Batman universe, but that was the first time that they kind of...
Renee Montoya, who then became the Question.
There's
a minor character you'd want to see like elevated to be the focal point. Once upon a time, I would have said, and this is long ago, Ryan, just before when you hear this.
Oh.
Long ago, I would have said Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
That ship is sailed like sailed out of the galaxy.
Hey, you got a ghost spider now.
They ruined her.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that thing is. Forget that answer. I just said once it would have been that answer. I'm going to say Inza. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. From
Dr. Fate's wife.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
Because the
one.
character was never really done. I mean, she's always been there with him. I'm talking about the Kent Nelson Dr. Fate, but she's never really been the center of action.
Do you know what I want? I want... what is that noise?
Oh, sorry.
I want
AirPods.
a major event that goes from the formation of the JSA into the JLA, follow through the eyes of Zatara Zatanna.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
What? Where'd you pull that out of? That's a
I
good
love
answer.
him. I mean,
That's a good answer.
Zatanna is one of my favorite characters, right?
Yeah.
So actually having Zatara, because we get him in pieces,
Yeah.
right?
Young Justice, my man.
But he,
This is too
I know
complicated
he's
for
in
Ryan.
there. I know
Just
he's in
too
there.
complicated for
But
Ryan.
he is a character that, I mean, because he should still be alive when the JLA is formed, right?
Yeah, he is.
He doesn't die till later, and he's there from the very beginning, right? So I know Slam Bradley was used for quite a long time at DC. Rucka and Brubaker and a few other characters used him.
He's also in the New Frontier.
Yep.
Slam Bradley.
And so some of those those pre Batman and Superman characters.
What you'd want is a character to cover the 50s.
Well, I think he's there.
Yeah,
right.
He
that
is.
whole
That's
era.
what I mean. That's a good call.
Right.
Yeah.
How about that dock worker that likes Superman?
Bibbo?
Is that his name?
Bibbo. Yeah.
I like him.
They bring him back occasionally.
Yeah.
I feel like there's when we started talking about it, Spider-Man has an amazing cast of non-powered humans.
I mean, almost entirely, right?
Almost, yeah. Everybody he deals with is kind of a major...
Superman. I mean,
Jimmy,
you
Lois,
have to
Perry.
take Batman away from the equation because they're all non-powered, but they're all superheroes, right? Superman and Spider-Man must have the two biggest non-powered
Spider-Man,
supporting cast.
It's like Jay Johnson, Robbie Robertson, and
Yeah.
Gwen, and
Aunt
John,
May.
and Stacy, and Aunt May, and
All the Osborns.
MJ.
well, the Osborns don't count. MJ counts. Gwen counts.
I'm being joked.
They get power. Oh, well, the kid gets powers later, right?
Ben Ulrich counts.
Yeah.
But he's more of a Daredevil. Well, he became a Daredevil guy later after that.
Does a Green Lantern count?
As what?
No.
I mean, before they get their ring.
Nope.
False.
I mean, for what?
I don't know that there are rules.
Yeah.
Because
I
you're
just
talking
created
obscure
it.
characters. I'm
Right
like,
now.
No,
you're talking
that's
obscure
against the
characters.
rules.
The
It's
X-Men.
like-
The X-Men. Dupe. Does Dupe count? 'Cause
Yeah.
Dupe
Well,
is-
He
okay,
does.
but
He does.
the questioner's premise was Moira. So if
Right.
that's the model,
okay.
a
That's
character
the
who's
model.
been around.
For a while.
what do you want to do with them?
Well, he didn't ask that.
Because
too
as
late
soon
to
as they
answer
did
that.
something with Gwen Stacy, she became terrible
I know.
because she was dead.
Erbon asks, are annuals usually collected by themselves in any format? My first comic book ever was the Batman issue of Legends of the Dead Earth, and I'm wondering if it's collected anywhere. As someone who knew Batman only through the movies and TV shows, it was extremely confusing at first, but I enjoy the stories quite a bit. I don't think they ever... I mean, it may be in an Elseworld collection somewhere.
Which one was that one?
Batman Annual Legends of the Dead Earth. I want to say it was annual 18 or something like that. I don't remember what number it was. But yeah, this whole year where they had these, it was Elseworld stories, right? But yeah, I mean, annuals are sometimes collected normally just within the regular run. But this particular one, I would think the only place it may have been collected is some of those Batman Elseworld collections. That's the only thing I can think.
And some annuals are collected if they're all part of a crossover.
Right.
It's a book of that crossover.
So a lot of those Marvel Epic collections that I've been getting, a few of them have started to... A couple volumes are basically here's the Atlantis Attacks crossover, right? Because it's here's one of the X-Men ones I have is it's mostly the X-Men, X-Force, X-Men, X-Force, X-Men, X-Force, New Mutants and New Warriors crossover. No, that must have been New Mutants and X-Factor crossover. And it's like, you forget how big those books are. I mean, that's like 200 pages of this like 250-page book, or those 4 annuals. So, they don't collect them too often because they're very large. This is from Zach. Ooh, tough question. When was the last time you started falling out of love with reading comics? For me, it was at the end of DCU, right before Rebirth started. Neither Marvel or DC were putting out their best stuff. Zach, that was a tough year. There were some really good books during that point, but a lot of stuff was not firing on all cylinders. I have times where I'm reading more and times where I'm reading less. It's obviously changed very dramatically since I bought the store and doing the podcast now. I'm kind of looking at things very differently than when I was a fan, but I've told the story that I had some years post Marvel where I was like, I don't know that I really care about this stuff anymore. Ooh, what's this Vertigo stuff? This looks pretty interesting. Oh, never mind. Now I'm fully back in the comics. So, but really, since then, I never stopped. So I don't have a good answer to this.
For me, I wasn't heavily into comics as a kid. They were just kind of there. I read a handful here and there, but nothing too great. And then when I tried to kind of jump into them in like after high school, it was kind of overwhelming. And then I kind of just petered out because there was just too much. Because it was all the stuff after Heroes Reborn, or the relaunch of all like the Amazing Spider-Man and Avengers and all that stuff. So, but the funny thing, I came back into comics at the before the New 52. So for me, it was like 52 brought me back in and introduced me to all these random characters. So I was just eating up anything. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was just garbage before that.
Sure,
but
of course.
I think it's just, for me, it's more like creative teams. Just something turned sour.
When was Heroes Reborn?
Was that Reborn? That was hold on. That was late 90s.
Yeah. So there was a period.
I love how Ryan goes, yeah, 98, 99.
I'd say my answer to this question is...
Wait, let me get...
I don't listen to Ryan at all.
I think that was...
Should be 97.
97.
Okay, so my answer to this question is there's a period between the death of Superman and Heroes Reborn when I was not reading any comics.
The era with the bad girls where they're all half naked, and
I was not reading comics at all.
Well, that was a lot. That's when I was like, and Vertigo.
Yeah, but wasn't that the era of just like splash pages? Mm-hmm. Even Thor became half naked.
That was like.
What else happened?
That's when Marvel went bankrupt. That's when
post Daredevil had an armor on for some reason. That's when. Yeah, I think Captain America got an armor for some reason.
I was completely out of comics.
Yeah, that was a pretty garbage area.
Vertigo. Were you not? You just didn't...
I was there at the start of Vertigo, but I didn't keep up. There was a period in the mid-90s, I want to say maybe like 94 to 97.
Yeah.
Maybe Love and Rockets, but nothing else.
Dawn. Wasn't the Onslaught stuff right before that?
Yeah. Yep.
I was into the Onslaught shit. I was buying into that star hard. And before that was Age of Apocalypse. That was good too. Wait, what's wrong with you guys? Wait, you guys didn't like any of that stuff?
That I was totally into.
Yeah.
Wait. I didn't say...
wait a minute. No, there was actually good stuff there too.
I think I answered it a little differently. I wasn't saying I didn't like it. I was saying I wasn't reading it.
Look. Kevin was into drugs, rock and roll, partying, going out.
Finding women.
Wait, Kevin's looking at me like, why are you telling him that?
Why are you telling him all those secrets?
The philosophy in the comics publishers back in the Golden and Silver Age was these are for an audience that as soon as they discover, let me think what it is cars, girls, and rock and roll, we've lost the customer.
Exactly. That's what you were.
You know what? It still translates today.
Wait,
because a guy gets married.
What was the original
he doesn't get
question?
Comics no more.
What's that start?
When was the last time?
Yeah.
When was the last time you fell out of love with comics?
Okay, so I answered a little differently than
that. It's hard because even if I fall out, I'll find something new.
Right.
I'll switch over to mangas for a while, or I'll read Vertigo, not your Vertigo, but some other Vertigo books.
So Ryan remembers. So there was a point where I was like, everything new sucks. I'm not going to get anything new. Instead of getting anything new in my pull box for like...
He's going to read the 20 years.
No. It was like, it would be like 4 months. I would come in every week on Wednesday and get a stack of old comics.
There you go. Yeah.
I remember that. Because that was when I first started working.
I just got a stack of old comics. I would go back into the bins, find something that I wanted to get.
Going through the bins
and I would just bring them forward like I would get comics,
but
like new ones.
The funny thing is,
my thought process was, Ryan actually gets more for an old comic than he does for a new comic. He gets all of the money.
But what's funny about you is you kept telling Ryan, this is all garbage, there's nothing good. And Ryan's like, no, there's good stuff. And you're like, that's phooey. And then when he finally broke through your shell, you're like, all right. And there was a period of time where you're like, Ryan, if it's good, put it on my list, I'll buy it.
Was it Green Lantern?
Yeah, well, no,
Jeff Johns?
I think that is still here. That is still here, but Ryan just tells me to go on the hub, and then I just don't get it.
Yeah, that was when Ryan was doing excellent customer service, unlike today when he has the hub as his assistant.
We used to have a regular customer when I was at the counter of Comics and Comics. We had a regular customer who would come in like clockwork. I want to say once a month or a couple times a month, and he'd bring in a short box of Silver Age comics, like just like runs of adventure, runs of action, runs of Strange Tales, whatever, for trade. He'd just bring in his collection one short box at a time, like once a month, and all he would buy were current comics off the shelf. That's what he'd use the trade for. He would cash out the short box and then cash out his trade.
I'm sure for him it made sense, right? For him, he goes, I'm not going to pay for these current comics I want to read, and I have all these old comics.
I have these old comics that I have no interest in anymore.
Yeah.
It was a one-to-one. He would just directly take that trade and spend it on current comics.
Wow.
Scott's like...
Scott's just wondering...
My brain just blew up. It just froze for a second. There's smoke coming out of my ears going, oh my God, he probably got rid of such good stuff.
But at that time, nobody cared about those Silver Age books. They were guiding at like $2 in mint.
Yeah, that's true, because that would have been what?
Early 90s?
Early 90s. Yeah. Nobody was... the market was... It was there for the important books. There was no such thing as a minor key back then.
Nope.
Such thing as a minor key. There was Amazing Fantasy 15, Action Comics #1, Batman or Detective 27. And that was pretty much it. I mean, again, Showcase 22.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
but those are the big ones, and then everything else was like $10.
This makes you just want to do an episode where we just bust open a comic.
Like an old price guide.
I have that.
I got the most worthless shit there is, man.
Overstreet used to release a monthly update, a little magazine, and that's when they started introducing an H next to certain books, hot, and a plus, meaning it had gone up since the last update. That's when the market really went insane.
Well, I told you the story in the 80s when I would go through I would go to Cosmic Comics in Sunnyvale, and Sue was back. She was the owner, and it's when I had to go get. I wasn't current on X-Men, and that's what I collected in the neighborhood. I collected X-Men. My buddy collected Fantastic Four. Somebody collected Daredevil. So we couldn't collect the same thing. It just didn't happen.
I like this plan.
Right? So we all had stuff, and if somebody else got an X-Men, then they would trade it to me, right? So you trading was
mandatory,
easy. Right? But so you go into Sue, and there's the guide, right? The guide's all the regular comic books, and then this sheet of binder paper with the X-Men prices that are in pencil, in like some erased out. Like each week, she was erasing them out, and I'm like, dude, I wish they were in the Mile High, because if you didn't have a price guide, you used the Mile High, which was in your comics.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Mile High's selling it for, so that's the price guide. So, and that was kind of cool for those of you that read comics from the 80s and 70s.
We had the Wizard price guide.
Oh, I actually loved it. I loved Wizard. I love Wizard, man. I like the movie casting they did all the time.
So
it was
loved the Twisted Mego Theater.
Oh yeah,
that was my favorite thing.
Dude, Wizard brought a lot to the industry, man. They were like the news, like the hype man of the industry for a good while. The reason why you brought up memories when you brought up Heroes Reborn. That was the first time that I realized you could actually subscribe to comics in stores. So those four number ones were the first ones I ever. Well, Mel at the time made me prepay for them, but after that, he also told me.
That's how he did it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But
how you
only
avoided
number
stuck
one,
with some-
only number one, and then I would buy him off the shelf until one day someone goes, you could subscribe to this. And we're like, what the hell is that? And we're like, we'll pull them for you and just come every week. And they're like, oh, motherfucker, you got me.
Does anybody here at the table? Here's my question that came from Scott on Twitter.
But we're still on Patreon.
Oh, we're on Patreon.
Yeah.
Hold Scott's question.
Patreon first.
That is it from Patreon.
Never mind.
Hold on.
Right.
Which Scott?
Is this Scott?
This is from Scott on Twitter.
Is this Scott Shea?
He asked,
to you.
Is it Scott Shea?
What is your person? Do any of you have any speculator breaking moments where you instantly just became a speculator?
Oh, I
and
became
bought
my
more
own
comic
speculator.
books?
I don't have this question.
I have
from
the
him.
most famous.
Oh, from Scott Shea.
I have the most
Ryan's over there
famous
on the computer
speculator
going,
story
I can't
ever.
Find this one.
I have the most famous speculator story ever, and
Okay,
I've told
so
this one
nice.
before. One of my favorite artists is Jim Lee, and at the time, one of my favorite writers was Frank Miller. So I speculated this book to myself. I hyped it up, and I bought a stack myself, and that book went nowhere.
No.
Okay, here you go, Scott. I've got my answer to this.
Yes.
I actually remember this clearly.
I still have 10 perfect copies of that book, by the way, of both covers.
Do you know where they are?
They
That's
exist.
the key.
Just normal speculator behavior.
Giving my mother the money because I had something to do, and so I couldn't go myself. But she had to pass by our local comic store coming home from work, and I said, "Here is $2. I need you to buy me 3 copies of Secret Wars #2." As in the original series.
Yeah.
I'd missed #1. It sold out. I never got a copy.
You wanted to buy it.
I'm like, well, every issue of this is going to be gold. I need you to buy me. She's like, are you sure you want to spend that much money on one comic book? I said, but you don't understand. This is an investment.
Mom.
This is going to cash out big time later on. That was my speculator rise and fall in that moment.
See, I just did the easy way. I just bought a store. It's just much easier now, all right?
I'm always tempted, and then I'm just like, no, don't want to do that.
You buy multiple copies of stuff that comes in.
No, I do.
No, that's him.
Because I like covers.
That's him.
Well, I buy it because I like the covers.
Yeah.
How many times do you see me selling that shit? Never.
I know.
Yeah, that's not speculating
like
at all.
He said that's speculator behavior.
Yeah.
No, that speculative behavior is you're buying intending to sell. I never intend to sell, really.
Yeah, it is very, very rare that I buy multiple copies of something for myself. I have ones where I've gotten an autograph on one, so I had my regular copy plus a copy I got signed. I've had things like that, but
I'll tell you why I buy multiples. I'll tell you why I buy multiples right now. First of all, I need a backup. Second of all,
you need your backup for your backup.
No, this is why he needs a backup, because he reads a lot of comic books on the toilet. And you never know what's going to happen.
Hey man, that's secret now.
No, it's not secret for anybody that collects comic books.
He
It's
falls
not
asleep
secret.
reading one of Crumple's.
That has happened. That has happened, and I was very mad at myself. But anyways, I need a backup if it's a cover I really like or a book I really like. Second of all, I have collections. Okay, I have a Jim Lee cover collection or a Turner or whatever, specific artist collections. So I'm like, well, shit, I need one for that collection and one for the actual run. So I'll keep the Nightwings with the Nightwings, but if say I don't know, Jim Lee does a Nightwing cover, therefore I need another one because it needs to go into the Jim Lee collection.
How do you organize the Jim Lee
It's
box?
a Jim Lee box.
Is it just any order, or is it chronological?
It's usually no. It's
or is it a mess?
It's in DC and the Marvel and then weird shit he does otherwise.
So,
I got the Comic-Con guide, not the guide, the program book because he did the cover for that and he did Turtles on it. I've never seen him do Turtles before.
That's cool.
So it's in the Jim Lee box.
So I have 2 speculator moments, Ryan. One, teenage Scott takes his bike, rides down to Cosmic Comics where Sue is working, and he has gotten the green light from his buddies to collect Daredevil at this point.
Number 1?
No. We're in the Frank Miller era.
Oh, that's still good.
And I buy 3 of the sweetest yellow cover.
The Electra?
181 or the gun cover?
Daredevil with the gun
cover. Oh god,
3 of them.
I gotta
Just
tell
worth
them.
nothing at this point.
Okay, so years ago when we were at the old shop,
I think I'm taking the cake with that All-Star Batman, though. But go ahead, Brock.
years ago at the old shop, Ryan and I are working, and this guy comes in, old dude, just like with short box, right? And he's like, "I got some comics. They're just worth a shit ton." It's like rolls his eyes. Okay. Opens it up. It's like 20 copies of a bagged Death of Superman, right? And what, 25, 30 copies of that Daredevil issue?
Oh. Probably more. Probably like half a short box. 80 copies of that book.
He had a gold version of Wildcats #1.
That actually is worth a little bit of money.
No, not at the time.
Oh, I think now it is.
With the price tag of $99.99 still on the plastic.
Oh, I hope he got 10%
I don't even
off
remember
at
how
least.
much you gave him.
Anyway, can I get $50 a piece for Secret Wars #2?
And my second speculator
The
moment.
Secret Wars are going up a little bit. A little bit.
You still have those 3 copies?
I don't know if it was Doug or Ken that owned the shop at the time. I think it was still Doug. Mm-hmm. And I came in and I was looking for Moon Knight.
Yeah.
I was here for that.
The Moon Knight Platt stuff.
I remember.
Oh,
And
I like the Moon Knight Platt. That's my favorite.
I couldn't find it anywhere.
That's my favorite.
And Ryan, I don't know if you. I think you might have just been a shop troll at that point. You were just
I was
hanging
here.
out.
I was here.
When is he
troll.
never a troll?
No, he was the guy in the trench coat just hanging out in the shop.
Reading my Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Oh, no, he had
so
eyeliner,
good,
too.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Fantastic.
Ken goes, "Yeah, that Moon Knight's over there."
No, that was Doug. That was Doug.
That was Doug.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, that Moon Knight's right over there." And there was like 2 copies, and I just was like, "Okay, I'll take those 2 copies." And then I was like, "Here you go." I would buy them, and I don't know if
You traded him back in. I remember.
I
like
traded
the next
him
week or
back
something.
in like the next week.
Yeah.
For like $25 a piece. Doug was like, and he sold them like the next day for like $35.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And so, but they were on the shelf sitting there.
Oh man, those were excellent issues. Though.
So that was that.
So good.
That was kind of that art resurgence.
That was like image before image. That was like
Right.
That was like
Oh,
man.
he was so good when he first started. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the only question.
Do
I
we
have
dare
for
go
Scott.
down a further tangent
more
here?
Scott questions?
Oh yeah, what's the tangent?
No tangent. No tangent.
Okay,
sure?
I'll
You
hold
sure,
it for
Ryan?
another time.
We have a couple questions. We're gonna get to a few of these. First one's from our good friend R.J. Palmer, who asks, "I've never read
Is that
any-
Pokemon Man?
It is.
Oh hey, what's up, dude?
Who is
It
this?
says, I've never read any comics. R.J. Palmer, if you check him out on Twitter, it's at Arvalis, Arvalis. He does a ton of really good art. He was also, he did art, concept design, and character design
We
work
ran
for
into
the
him at Comic-Con. He's
Detective
super
Pikachu
cool.
movie.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a super
Yep,
cool guy.
yep. He says, I have never read any comics with Damian Wayne in it, but is he a whiny little try-hard edgelord like he is in the animated movies? And the answer is yes.
But in the
He's
comics, he's way better.
and he's incredible.
Read the
okay?
last issue of Batman. Read the
Damian
last
Wayne
issue
is
of Batman.
incredible. All you Damian haters out there.
What did he call him? What was that? What was the verb?
A whiny little try-hard edgelord.
Edgelord.
Yes.
I didn't even know what an edgelord
I
is.
love
that.
No,
term.
I love that Batman and Robin with Dick Grayson as Batman and Damian
Yeah.
as
Oh,
Robin.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
Morrison
that was
Quitely.
really good.
That to me is the
Fantastic.
best Damian Wayne.
Yep. No, Damian Wayne's fantastic.
Edgelord.
Yeah, edgelord. That's what you would have called me if I was born 15 years later.
You're an
If I rolled in here in a trench coat in 2007, 2012, you would have called me an edgelord. All right, that's what it would have
such
been
an
like.
edgelord.
Yeah.
Hold on. Keep talking.
Armando.
Stall. No.
Armando says, and this is a question we've answered before, but I'm going to do it again because it's very important today. He says, I've never read a Legion of Superheroes series before, anything to read before
again?
Bendis's run starts.
Wait, didn't we just?
We just did this like a
That's
few
been
weeks
answered.
ago.
This has been answered easily 3 times.
It's okay because
But there's
because Legion of Superheroes Millennium #1 is out tomorrow. Wednesday. So if you're listening to this, Wednesday, it's out
But
today.
you should
Did
go.
the hub get it for me?
Did you get my email?
I don't know. Like, a lot of my emails go to the junk box.
Well, you got to check that email, baby.
I used to have such good.
You would
personalized
also need
service.
to maybe just check out.
It is
Superman
personalized.
14.
Huh?
Superman 14.
No, it's not personalized just because it says Dear Toby on it. It's fucking personalized.
I choose who I send this stuff
Dear
to.
Toby.
Yeah. This week.
I don't
in our
send this.
store.
I don't send these emails to everyone. I specifically target the people I know that we're going to want this
You
stuff.
target the people that'll give you money.
I want mine to say, "Hey Scott, are you looking at this?" Scott, I know
so
you're not looking at this.
Is his question about anything to read in preparation for the Bendis version or
He
Legion?
says anything to read before the Bendis run. And the good thing is, no. You can just start fresh. It is going to be it's going to be the Legion, but it is going to be its own take on the Legion. They are doing their own story with it. The characters are a bit different. He's being introduced in Superman 14 they're being introduced for the first time.
You can pick up Superman 14 to kind of get a feel for it and where they're starting.
Now, if you want to read more older Legion superhero books, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff is out of print. I think the Silver Age stuff is probably difficult for a lot of modern readers. I still enjoy it, but I think it's maybe not the best. The classic run to read is called the Great Darkness Saga. Yep. That is often regarded as the best Legion superhero story. My personal suggestion for more modern readers is the Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, the Doomsday Clock creative team. They did a series called Superman and the Legion of Superheroes, where it ran in Action Comics. Yep. The trade paperback is out of print, however, you can get it fairly cheap online. I highly recommend picking that up because I think it is a fantastic reintroduction of the characters.
I think we have a copy of it.
I'll also add on the Jeff Johns, Gary Frank Superman Secret Origin, which has one issue. It's a 6-issue miniseries, and one of the issues is the Legion.
Yep.
And it's just great.
And they're reissuing that in a giant size.
In a hardcover, yeah. And so I have to assume Superman and the Legion of Superheroes will get reissued at some point of SDC numerous times, so I really hope they do. But I think you are free and clear to go into that by yourself. Now, for the hardcore Legion guys, it's Doomsday Clock 11.
Don't say anything.
No, I'm not. I'm not. But there's a little.
Oh no! I want nothing.
There's a little scene that may explain. There's an interview. There's an interview with Scott Snyder about what he's doing with the JSA and Commandi, with what's going on with Millennium and what's going on with Doomsday Clock. And his thing was like just wait. Like this all will make sense at the end.
In when will this all make sense?
Soon.
No, hold on. When will this all make sense, Kevin?
2020, baby.
You fucking. There is a moment in Doomsday Clock number 11 that is going to be, I think, very important to the Legion.
Hey Ryan, guess what's also really important to
You're
Legion?
not telling us about
that's the Young Justice cartoon that you keep hating on.
This counts. And I'm not hating on Young Justice.
You do.
He is not hating on
I seem to remember, Ryan.
Feels like he's going to plan to
Correct me if
it.
I'm wrong, because this was maybe back in 2018. Isn't Saturn Girl trapped in the past in Doomsday Clock?
You should read Doomsday Clock number 11.
It comes
But is my memory from a year ago? Is that accurate?
It is correct.
Okay,
it is
good.
correct.
Hey,
Just
so
she was there in Doomsday Clock and also in Batman, right? And Tom King's Batman.
I was trying to stall earlier because I was trying to find my two favorite pages of Damian Wayne, which is in the comic of Stephanie Brown Batgirl.
Okay.
Basically, she's walking through this like school court or something, and she notices this creepy little 10-year-old kid watching her. She runs over going, "What the hell are you doing? Like, why are you watching me?" And he basically goes, "Relax, I'm in street clothes. Nobody will know I'm Robin."
Yeah.
And goes, "I'm just trying to figure out what makes Stephanie tick." And she goes, "Well, not everything's about fear and law, and, there's life, and we're supposed to do other stuff." And he responds with basically, "Well, I don't understand. Everything should be about fear." And then she goes, "Well, of course you don't understand. You're 10 years old, and stop looking at my chest." And he responds with, "What chest?" And she storms off. It's my favorite 2 pages of Damian Wayne ever.
He's a dickhead.
Yeah.
I love Damian.
It's freaking awesome.
I love Damian.
Is it Trenchlord? What is it?
Edgelord. Joshua asks, how is Ryan going to have time to watch all those Disney Plus shows?
Ryan will make time for those. It's all the stuff we recommend to Ryan that he should be watching. He goes, yeah, I'll put it on a list. And,
Get to one day.
Nope. No, just be honest.
But in all seriousness, when you read comic books, do you sometimes set music? Do you play music when you listen to when you read comics?
No, distracting.
I'm the same.
Distracting.
I
can comic books pure, man. No distract, no cars, nothing. I have to be in a quiet corner.
Dude, yeah, he gets into a soundless chamber to read his
comics. I have to read that shit. I might
he
read it out
the
loud
page so gently. No, it doesn't make a sound.
Yeah, I might even read it out loud with voices. Maybe not, but yeah, no distractions.
I'm laughing to myself because I just looked at dictionary.com for the definition of edgelord.
What is the definition?
An edgelord is someone on an internet forum who deliberately talks about controversial, offensive, taboo, or nihilistic subjects in order to shock other users in an effort to appear cool or edgy.
Like I said.
I can listen to music while I read. Sometimes I'll have something playing when I'm reading comics. I've noticed that when I read Tom King's Batman lately, and he has a lot of music in it, I'm trying to find the version that he's listening to and play it while I'm reading it. So,
cool.
But yeah, other than that, it doesn't bother me. You put a TV on though, I can't read.
No, I can't either. Chris Arendt from Newsarama asks, "What will DC and Marvel's big 2020 events be?" Now, there was a rumor on Bleeding Cool today, which I don't want to get into.
The big 2020 event for DC is going to be the release
Doomsday
of Doomsday Clock.
Motherfucking son of a...
Chris, you already know my answer to this. The triumphant Doomsday Clock number 12.
So, DC solicitations for December should be out in about 2.5 weeks.
Okay,
hey,
Ryan,
I think these are some betting words
nothing.
here. I think these are some betting words.
How many times has that 11 been solicited before today?
Once. It just keeps getting delayed, right? If they solicit 12 in that catalog, because look, if it was coming out next month, it would have been in last month's catalog, right? The fact that they have not even solicited 12 means they're holding it back. If it's not in the October catalog, it's 2020, right? So we'll know. It will not come out.
We're going to know unless they just
even
drop it.
Brock, even if it's in the October catalog, it doesn't mean it's coming out.
They send you the exact amount that you got of 11 and just drop it.
It's coming out. Okay. It's in that October solicitation for December release.
Oh God, the crow of you gonna eat is gonna be amazing.
It has to be. Okay.
We're gonna end up catching Ryan on some kind of technicality because it's gonna come out like December 27th, and Ryan's gonna get sick and lose the keys to the shop.
December 26th is the final shipping day.
But Ryan won't be here, and the shop won't open up until like the 1st.
Are you kidding? He'll drive down here just for that.
Have you not heard a story of him in Italy where he like dancing around? Or wherever you were?
I'm dancing in my underwear? What'd you say?
Yeah, you were like dancing around and tippy-toeing, reading his fucking book.
It was on his honeymoon. He's like,
honeymoon! That's what it was.
It was in France.
It was in France.
Those European countries.
But seriously, what is the big Marvel event for 2020?
Nobody knows anything.
Marvel 1002?
There's rumors of stuff going on with Batman in 2020. Big surprise. I'm going to put that on the don't believe it scale.
I know what's happening with Batman in 2020.
He loses Tom King.
Then he takes his dead body of Alfred and he goes to Ra's al Ghul and goes, "Hey man, tell me where your damn pit is at, and I'm gonna put my Alfred in it."
So 2020 will be. That should be, if we're going 50 issues, that should be getting close. That should be towards the wrap-up of Scott Snyder's run on Justice League, right? He's building to something huge. He's been saying this forever.
Snyder?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's got to be DC's 2020 thing. Snyder's next book has to be DC 2020. I mean, that's what it's got to be, because I figure he'll be off Justice League at 50 into whatever this is. Marvel, I mean, so they did X-Men in 2019, right? So what's...
Wait! Isn't the whole 2099 thing big?
They're doing a 2099 month in October,
which is 80 years
November
from now or something, right?
Well, 2099 is 80 years from now. 1939 was 80 years from now, so we're halfway to 2099 for the Marvel universe.
Nice,
yeah. Marvel, I mean, I don't know. I have no clue what their event's going to be, but I feel like we are due for an Avengers kind of shakeup.
Yeah.
I think Spider-Man's had his events. Thor just had his events. The X-Men just did their big thing. I feel like
Thrasher's going to lead the team, man.
I feel like we're back to Avengers. I think Avengers gets the next big event.
It's never going to happen.
Yes, it is, man. Look
Avengers,
how many times Night Thrasher showed up in Action Comics. Not Action
Avengers
comics.
been
Marvel Comics 1000.
Avengers has been very.
I would know. I didn't get it.
Just kind of skating by.
Yeah.
Jason Aaron's run hasn't done big numbers.
The Hickman stuff was kind of their last big thing, but it didn't. I don't think it hit as big as the other ones that happened, like AVX and some of the others.
I call Avengers. So big Avengers event 2020. That's my call. And big Justice League post Snyder event from DC.
I mean, the aftermath of Superman punching Dr. Manhattan is so 2020.
I've already called mine.
We got 2 last questions.
Enough said.
From M. When do you judge when a book is going to be dropped? How do you drop?
You?
Or just anyone? How do you drop a book? How do you drop a book?
One issue, if it's so, that's fine. The second issue, if it's so, it's gone.
Okay.
I mean, for me, I normally get stuck with miniseries. So if I buy one, I normally, unless the first issue is total trash. I mean, kind of what Scott said. If it's so, I kind of keep with it. But
for me, if it gets good after a point, Gage is going to pick it up in a dollar bin.
Give it
$1
to you.
bin somewhere where he's going to read it and want to get rid of it, and or his brother read it, and then he'll give it to me. So
I am like ride or die on most major DC books. I could not tell you what would it take me to drop like Action Comics or Batman. I have no idea. Like Mark Miller and Rob Liefeld on Batman, maybe I drop it together. I drop it. Like that would be the thing, right? Like
collaborating.
Wait, you buy every
Rob's
Batman?
Drawing and Mark's writing.
Yeah, Batman, Action, Superman,
every single one, no matter
Worst
who.
nightmare.
I mean, the reason I dropped
That
Batgirl
would be
was
a cool
because they
world.
changed that character so dramatically. I'm like, well, this isn't hashtag not my Batgirl, so I'm done. That's what
Such a millennial.
Batgirl's the one I dropped.
Hey,
right?
Ryan, I got a Twitter question from Scott. Another one. That came up. What is your nightmare artist-writer team-up?
I think I just said it.
I think he just said it. Yeah.
It's not everybody's.
Chris Claremont, John Byrne in 2019. That's going to be a rough one.
anything Neil Adams.
I still think Marvel puts out a Claremont Byrne X-Men thing. I think that's the December surprise right there.
I don't think it's a Claremont. I think it's that Byrne elsewhere.
You think they're going to put that out?
He's got like 10 full issues drawn. I don't think he's doing that just for shits and giggles.
You don't think he gets you don't think they pull Claremont into like
It's specifically it's specifically the premise is if Byrne had stayed and Claremont had left,
right.
This is what the book would have been.
All right.
He's drawn 10 full issues.
John Byrne is doing X-Men fanfic right now.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is maybe you draw
John?
one just for yourself for fun, but he's
Why,
drawing
John?
and lettering full issues.
Why,
Yeah.
John?
Because
Why?
Marvel's it's obviously a wink wink. Yes, we'll put this out at some point.
Yep. But yeah, it would take something pretty dramatic for me to get. No, there are plenty of miniseries specials, new books where I'm like, fuck, I love Lucifer, but oof, that new book is
I
just
tried.
I can't.
I told you.
So I dropped it. I dropped
I'm
it.
calling you out, man. It's not fucking Lucifer. It's Nova when you do that.
It's what?
Nova. Or Speedball. Not Lucifer.
What? I have every book that they've
Yeah, but
had.
there's times where you're like, I really, really like Speedball. I don't like this book. I'm just going to buy it anyways.
I mean, I won't buy any appearance they're in, but I'll buy any book called that. Yeah, if there's a book called Nova, I'm
You
buying
used
it.
to buy
Well,
any appearance, though.
Real
That's
Nova.
not true.
Real Nova.
Okay.
No, on
The new Nova.
Speedball.
The new Nova doesn't count. I mean, if you go up to Civil War, I have every single appearance of every single New Warrior except for Namorita. I don't have a lot of her Silver Age appearances because fucking it's very different. But I have every single appearance of every single character in the New Warriors.
Namorita and those
If you count Vance Astro as Vance Astrovic, I don't have his Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. I have it in collected format, but that's another.
the John
that's a whole
Byrne or
other story.
Marita Namor story that had
It's good.
a lot of
Yep, I got a lot of-
Namorita
I
in
got
it.
all
That
those.
stuff is freaking
Phenomenal.
awesome. Yep.
Ooh,
He was
maybe-
good. He was so
They
good.
should
at
do an
one
epic
point.
collection on that shit, man. I'd be
Flight,
buying
his
that.
Alpha Flight, his Namor run.
Yeah, man. He got a lot of classic stuff.
FF.
All right, final question. Final question.
Prime
Final.
time,
Is
John
it final
Byrne.
final or final?
Final question. It's from
You sure?
Pac-Man. It's from Pac-Man.
Pac-Man?
Yep. It's from
not from
Pac-Man. He
Scott.
says waka waka waka.
Does he really?
Can you do that again? Can you do it again?
See, this is the kind of gold you will get in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night, this is the kind of gold.
You know, it's funny. One of my dear friends is actually named Pac-Man. No. He took me under his wing in L.A. when we were working on movies.
Wait, Ryan, did you just make it funny?
Yeah, he did.
So Pac-Man says, ignoring
That was pretty good.
stuff like what they say in Who's Who, which members of the Justice League, or which member of the Justice League should be depicted as the tallest? Who's the tallest member of the Justice League?
Wonder Woman.
Superman,
Wonder Woman,
Wonder Woman, and then Batman. Oh, sorry, I take that back. Superman, Hawkman, Wonder Woman.
What about Martian
then
Manhunter?
Martian Manhunter, I don't think it's that tall.
You guys are forgetting.
Wait, he left Wonder Woman out now?
You guys are forgetting Plastic Man. He's
Well,
the
he
tallest.
can. That's different.
That's
I think Superman and Hawkman are equivalent
tallest? How
tall are
equivalent
they?
size.
You don't think Big Bar is taller than
6'5"?
Superman?
Oh,
six
Big
six
Bar,
four,
yeah.
6'6"?
Big Bar is
6'4",
taller
6'5".
than
I mean, if you want to
Bart
go
is
like,
huge.
if you want to go just JLA, like Morrison's extended
Yeah.
team, yes,
Let's
Big
do
Bart
it.
is taller
But
than
Big,
all.
Yeah.
Bar- but Big
I just
Bart
won,
is-
Ryan Higgins.
But Big Bart is only slightly taller than Wonder Woman.
That's fine. She's still
I mean, I
taller.
think
I'll
Aquaman
win.
and Green. I think Flash and Green Lantern are the shortest. I think they're of equivalent height.
Wait, Aquaman is one of the shortest?
Flash and Green Lantern.
Oh.
I think Aquaman and Batman are pretty equivalent.
Okay.
I think Wonder Woman is about an inch taller than them, and I think Superman, Hawkman. I think Hawkman is on a normal like the Big 7 JLA, but I still want to put him on that list because I think Hawkman should be depicted as tall as Superman. I think they are this.
Because
I think
of
they.
his mask?
Is Martian Manhunter taller than
Yeah, Martian
Batman?
Manhunter's going to be pretty tall.
I know.
we
I
really
don't.
need to go to Who's Who for this because they
But
used to print
that's what
the
he says.
height.
He says ignoring Who's Who.
Oh.
Yeah, he's
Who
Oh, I didn't
should-
hear that
who, yeah,
part.
who should be who should be
Superman should be the tallest.
So
Now, talk
I
about
win with
some
Big Bardo,
reprints.
though.
Big Barda could be taller than Superman, but I don't think of her as a JLA
Yeah.
member.
Like I said, just
Okay,
outside the Big 7, I think Hawkman's the only one that would be taller than everyone else.
How tall is Lex?
Oh, Lex isn't tall.
5'11"?
If 5'10", 5'11", yeah. Lex, to me, I think you have to pull
How
Lex away.
tall is-
Lex shouldn't be tall.
Is Wally taller than Barry?
Yes.
No.
Wally? Yes. Wally West? Taller than Barry Allen? Yes.
No.
He's got him by like an inch.
I disagree.
I think
I would agree.
No.
I think Greenland. I think
beyond nerdy, by the way.
no,
We're
I think Hal. I think
This one.
Hal and Barry are like 5'9", 5'10".
No.
I think Wally's
That's like a little guy. Sorry, Toby.
no.
That's like a little dude.
Excuse me.
Hal and Barry, I'm thinking are like 6 even.
Wait, I thought Wally is shorter
that's
than
what I'm
Barry.
thinking. I'm thinking Wally is a little taller as a man.
Yeah, the Caucasian
Obviously,
people,
as a
they're
little
taller.
kid,
so
I think that
Hal's 5'11" and Barry's 6 feet.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Wally is
I
5.
see, I feel like they're all
10.
in that 5'10" to
Yeah.
Yeah, Wally's
6'1"
like
That's
5'10".
what I
You
said.
don't think Wally's 5'10"?
You said 5'9".
No, I
That's-
said like 5'10", like 5'10", 5'11".
I think
Okay,
Wally
I'll
is
go 5'10",
shorter,
5'11". I think Wally's taller.
Wait, which Wally?
Wally West.
Are we
Real
talking
Wally
in costume
West.
or out of
Don't
costume?
tell me- Don't give me that bullshit.
Well, his a skin tight
Did you
mask,
offend
so it
me?
won't really
Did you hear
affect
the other
anything,
Wally
right?
West rapping about quitting
Those
Flash?
tread are thicker
Oh,
than
yeah.
shit.
See,
Yeah, music
again,
video.
and this also, this level of granular detail is also the kind of thing you could get in the middle of the night.
This isn't a.
Oh,
this
yes.
This is a good preview.
And hold on. And excellent YouTube suggestions. Like the Count from Sesame Street singing his number song with whenever he says count bleeped out, so therefore it sounds like an F word.
That's an old meme.
Oh, it's so good,
And
though.
I was going to tell Scott a little anecdote about some
Hold on. I'm not done with my YouTube
Silver Age
suggestions.
Marvel comics.
Okay.
Okay. The other one is Andy Serkis singing the Grease song with Jack Black. An excellent 3 a.m. YouTube
Save
video.
these for the marathon.
Okay.
Save these for the marathon.
I'm the
we have to
Count,
get
and
that.
I really like to bleep. Yeah,
Yes.
it's one of the funniest videos of all time.
Especially at 3 a.m. It's beyond funny at 3
So
a.m.
what was your
This could
Silver
be
Age
cool.
question?
So
No, it's not a
what's the
question. It's a thing that happened at Comics and Comics.
What's our
But
Patreon?
all maturity will have left the building as soon as I break this out.
Oh, please do. Please do. That's
With,
the last thing we're doing today.
apologies to John for even putting this on the same episode as his fine book.
That's all right.
Oh,
So,
you're degrading this
nobody-
episode right now, aren't you?
Hopefully,
I
anybody
already
who
do
cared
that.
about this is tuned out.
A long time ago.
Nobody cared about the monster comics. Where creatures roam, where monsters dwell. Nobody cared.
Just Jim cares.
Okay. So two employees back in the day who were artists used to deface those comics. They would take an eraser at the counter and markers and redraw the covers. So there's
I think I know the story.
You might, but I don't think Scott does. Yeah. So it's a Strange Tales. It's a Tales to Astonish. It's something I can't remember now. But there's this big monster on the cover, and you can't really
Great radio.
I know, that's what I was about to say. I can't really demonstrate it on the air, but he just imagine he's standing in an aggressive pose above a crowd of fleeing people. and the word balloon says puny humans or something like that. Puny humans, none of you can beat me. So what these guys did was they erased, so his legs are akimbo on the drawing. They drew this huge penis hanging down, and then they erased the word balloon and wrote off at the end. But the best part was not that. So they matched the color. You'd have to be 6 inches away to notice that it was wrong.
Dude, these are one of a kind
but
issues,
wait, the best part was
so worth it now.
They put it in a Mylar and put it on the wall among all the really valuable comics, and it was there for easily a month before our manager noticed it.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Wait, was this the comic? Was it?
This is when it was on Cowper.
Did you buy one of these books?
I didn't buy it, but I might have gone by it.
You might have gazed on that cover.
Dude, I would have been like,
I
want that Iron Fist 15 right there, but that's really...
that's something drawing to me to that.
Dude,
that monster cover.
Whoever owns these...
I don't know where they are now.
Oh, they're one of a kind. It's like that woman that defaced that one book that's graded.
This is one of those things that I would like to collect those now.
I would like to find defaced comics.
I would like to find all of the comics, defaced comics, and let's collect them. Let's make a little collection out of this. The comics and comics.
It's some name like Corgo or one of those Kirby monster names.
Just
puny humans, none of you can beat me off.
That's incredible.
And on that note, thanks Patreon backers.
I think this is part of the all-night comics conspiracy experience. Yeah, because we're going to go through all the back issues to find these comics to deface while Ryan is not here. I mean, we'll go. Don't worry, we're not going to
those books now are.
But I mean, these guys.
We're going to take quarter books and make them worth a lot more than a quarter when we're done with it.
Strange Sports with a dick on it.
No, it was. Oh, but see, that's just like somebody drew it with a ballpoint. This is crafted. They went to effort to match the color exactly.
Is this as good or as bad as the giant penis piece that Ryan has? The original
Oh God, the All-Star.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's he proudly has that on the wall over there. By the way,
molten lava.
Sure. Keep saying that.
Sure.
Keep saying that. Keep saying that.
They're cleaning out Solaris. The Solaris, the sun. What's this called? Solaris, the sun. Something. What's his name?
The Tyrant Sun.
Yeah, Solaris, the Tyrant Sun's cage.
Yeah, keep believing it.
Oh, that's the baby. That's when he's growing the baby sun.
Yes.
Yeah. That's not Solaris.
Well, but it's
that, of that species.
Yeah. Thank you to all of our high-tier Patreon backers for your support of
this episode.
We just lost another 20 subscribers
penthouse
today.
To the shit house.
The nonsense.
Looks like a penis.
Because of the holiday, Patreon does not finalize all its processing stuff, so yada, yada, yada. Next week, we'll have a nice big double episode.
I do like your Road Warrior shirt with dog.
A nice big episode where we'll have lots of Patreon people to thank. But for the meantime, let's thank our people from that we still have on here from last month. That is Joe Duff, Sam Che, Andrew Nelson Mendez at Recovery of an Anime Junkie podcast, Ryan Marling, and of course Craig Anderson over at CraigPAnderson.com. Go check those guys out. Lots of good stuff, especially that podcast and CraigPAnderson.com. Thank you guys for your support at The Comic Conspiracy. Sorry, let me try that again. At Patreon.com/Comic Conspiracy. Please go to Geekbox.net, Comic Conspiracy Podcast, and Apple Podcast to find all our previous episodes. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Comics Conspiracy. All audio, no video. Don't worry about it, though. If you want to send us an email, that's thecomicconspiracy@geekbox.net. We had a question to read an email from our classic email selection.
From year 2018.
He wanted something from 2011. I have nothing that goes back that far.
Yes, you do.
Earliest, it's 2013.
No,
2013 is the earliest email
I was wanting
have.
some from 1997 before the podcast even started.
That old.
Well,
So
you're doing that now?
No.
Yes,
I had a request for a 2011. We have none from 2011. So
you do 2012?
Maybe next time we'll talk. We'll do it. We'll do a classic episode. This episode is much too long, as it is already.
No, it's not.
Please go to comicsconspiracy.biz to read our. God, I don't even know what I'm pimping anymore. Comics. It's always Doctor Who. Whenever you ask, it's Doctor Who.
No. When it looks like a porn, it's Swamp Thing.
Or the Incredible Hulk. What is this?
Or Xena.
Looks like Red Dwarf. What the fuck is this? It's got to be Doctor Who. No, that's Doctor Who.
This is far too much production value for Doctor Who.
Comicsconspiracy.biz is where he's got some.
It's about to be a porn. It's got to be Swamp Thing.
Pocket. Comicsconspiracy.biz is where you can purchase all your physical comics from us now.
Yeah, or in the store.
Digital.comicsconspiracy.biz is still up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were told their digital storefront was going away last week.
Okay.
It's still around.
Do you still get monies?
Hopefully.
All right. Good
I've
for
inquired. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. But for the time being, I guess still go to digital.comicsconspiracy.biz if you would like to buy your digital comics.
All right.
Maybe they've changed their mind.
All right.
ConspiratorBrock.com. That is Brock's blog, video pull list, and unboxing videos. You can go over there and see his videos.
Excellent unboxing videos.
Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension podcast. It is Charlie's Doctor Who podcast. He should probably be back on next week. And Etsy.com/shop/Leanne Hill Art. That is my wife Leanne's Etsy store. She's working on a series of Disney's Haunted Mansion tarot cards right now. So you can buy those. Those are pretty nice. We can also buy them at the shop, too. We have all our products here, too. And some of them are on our website as well. I've been bad. I got to finish getting them out, but we're almost done. If you'd like to go to Twitter, Ryan Higgins Ryan.
Where else can you buy it too?
That is
her
me.
Etsy, her
Etsy,
eBay
here at the store or on the website.
There you go.
Ryan Higgins Ryan, that's me. I'm on Twitter. Brock is Brock Sager. Toby is Toby XI. Scott is CS Shea, SHEA. Kevin is that Kevin Sharp. The store is Comics Con Store. Please check out the Geekbox comedy button.
Does Tomorrow Productions have a tour?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure they promoted all their stuff in their exit. Manga Machinations and, of course, the Infinite Binge on YouTube. Please check all that stuff out. How
long have we been recording?
Last episode. I am done. We are going home. It is a humongous Wednesday this week.
Hey, Ryan.
Go to your local comic shop. Pick up all your books from Wednesday. It's a huge week.
Yeah.
Go buy your Spawn 300s. You pre-ordered that shit. Go pick them up. We'll see you next week.
There's